Wonderful. We're ready to begin. Welcome everyone to the March 15th, 2023 regular meeting of the San Francisco Elections Commission. I'm the president, Robin Stone. The time is now 6:02 p.m. and I call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall, room 408, 1 Dr. Carlton B. Goodlett Place, San Francisco, California, 94102, and on WebEx. As authorized by the Elections Commission's February 15th, 2023 vote, members of the public may attend the meeting to observe and provide public comment either at the physical meeting location or via phone or online. I'll briefly explain some procedures for participating in today's meetings. The minutes of this meeting will reflect that this meeting is being held in person at City Hall, room 408, 1 Dr. Carlton B. Goodlett Place, San Francisco. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Once your 3 minutes have expired, staff will thank you and you will be muted. When providing public comment, you are encouraged to state your name clearly. As soon as you begin speaking, you will have 3 minutes and 6 minutes if you're online with an interpreter. In addition to the physical meeting location, opportunities to provide public comment are available via WebEx and phone. Details and instructions for participating remotely are listed on the Commission's website and at the end of today's meeting agenda. In addition to participating in real time, interested persons are encouraged to participate in this meeting by submitting public comment in writing by 12 p.m. the day of the meeting to elections.commission@sfgov.org. It will be shared with the Commission after this meeting has concluded, and it will also be included as part of the official meeting file. I will now proceed with item 1, Commission roll call. Commissioners, please verbally state your presence at today's meeting after your name is called. Vice President Jordanek.
Here.
Commissioner Bernholz.
Here.
Commissioner Dye.
Here.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Here.
Commissioner LaBolsi.
Here.
Commissioner Parker.
Here.
And I, President Stone, am present. With 7 members present and accounted for, we have a quorum. Commissioner Parker will now state the following, will now state the land resolution from the adopted October 19th, 2022 Elections Commission resolution.
The San Francisco Elections Commission acknowledges that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors and relatives of the Ramaytush community and affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Parker. I just wanted to make one quick announcement about the agenda today, which is that we will be moving agenda item number 8, letter regarding security issues, from 8 to number 5. So it will come after the commissioner's reports. Just wanted to give everyone a little bit of a heads up on that. And with that, we will move to item number 2, general public comment. Public comment on any issue within the Election Commission's general jurisdiction that is not covered by any other item on this agenda.
So we have one person with their hand raised. Or Mr. Turner?
Yes, hello, commissioners. Thank you for being here tonight. I just wanted to real quickly refer to a couple articles I tried to have included in the package for the commissioners, and I attempted to gather as many signatures, as many email addresses as I could find to send over 2 reports, basically. One being the Little Hoover report, Making a Good System Better, which recommends that the state of California immediately move toward open source election systems. And the second was an article recently coming out in GovTech magazine called Are Open Source Elections More Secure? And I just want to read from that into the record real quick. It says, open source activist Brent Turner previously served as secretary for the California Association of Voting Officials and communications director for Open Voting Consortium. In contrast to the OSET Institute, Turner advocates for providing open source election software under an AGPL license that prevents them from being incorporated into closed source projects. He told GovTech for the U.S. He told GovTech, the U.S. should ensure election systems are primarily handled by nonprofits and governments that can focus on democratic goals rather than by vendors that need to make profit. Turner believes election officials can pull off adopting open source themselves. In the spirit of the effort, you have to endure these growing pains and transitional pains for the good of the democracy, Turner said. This is all doable. This isn't necessarily difficult. There's a political will issue and a push by proprietary interests to create fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the environment. That includes within the procurement departments of different governmental jurisdictions. My point here is that there is a group OSET, and I believe one of the commissioners is currently involved with them or previously, that is pushing for a licensing scheme to position themselves for monetary interests regarding the eventuation of open source election systems. And for those reasons, the public requests that Commissioner Bernholz recuses herself on issues surrounding open source election systems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no other commenters with their hands raised.
Great. So we'll close agenda item number 2 and move to agenda item number 3, the director's report. Discussion and possible action regarding the director's report, March 2023. And I'll hand it over to Director Ernst.
Thank you, President Stone. I'll just highlight, so this Friday is the deadline to respond to the RFP the department issued in relation to people having their votes restored who were justice involved. So the RFP is actually posted on the front page of our website. It's also on OCA's RFP site. So we sent the RFP out to around 50 organizations, I think. But again, I just want to put it out there that the time frame ends on Friday to submit if a group is interested in doing outreach to these folks. It's around $100,000 totals in the grant. No group would be eligible for more than $50,000. So I'd like to take any questions from there on the report.
Yeah, thank you for your report, Director Ernst. I just had one question on under Roman numeral 3B, the Office of Racial Equity report. And because this is going to come up later for us, but in terms of what the commission needs to prepare, I know in the past there were, I think, 2 documents that you posted as part of your update. There was the, I think it was more of a narrative, and then also the spreadsheet. Are you going to be providing both of those as part of an update, or just?
So the Office of Racial Equity is streamlining its process this time around. So that office actually sent a PowerPoint slideshow. And so departments and then also commissions will need to input their information into that PowerPoint slideshow. And then the Office of Racial Equity will consolidate the content from all the various departments and commissions for presentation to the Board of Supervisors. And I thought that I already sent that to the commission. If I haven't, did I?
You did.
Okay, so then, yeah, so that is the document to which you'll input your content.
Okay, and then will the PowerPoint for that we give you, will that be just like a second PowerPoint, or would it be included into yours?
It'll be included in ours.
Okay.
Right.
All right, great. And if there are any questions on the details, we'll just reach out to you. Thank you.
Commissioner Parker.
Thanks for all of for all this information. I really appreciate all the specific voter outreach to the marginalized communities that you highlighted again this time. And you know that I'm happy to see the outreach to high school students. I'll always be asking about that. I was just curious, a couple of small questions. One is, I was just going to say, maybe I'll move that chair so I can see you. I know that you said that the max grant for $50K for those 2 awards for the RFP that's due this Friday. Is it likely there will be just 2 organizations who are supported, or is it likely there would be smaller grants to multiple organizations, even though the max is 50?
It really depends on the number of bids we receive and the type of services those bids encompass. So I can't answer that question. until we see the bids.
Okay. And then one other note or question was with the high school outreach. Have you all ever partnered with the Youth Commission or the Student Advisory Council on efforts to get more students connected with that high school elections ambassador internship program?
Not on the ambassador specifically. I think we've reached out to them initially. I don't know if we've actually met yet. We're trying to actually work with them this time around.
Oh, great.
But specifically on the student ambassadors, I don't think we have directly with those two organizations, those two groups.
Okay, they might be good connections because they're so connected to so many of their peers across the city. Not through schools necessarily, that might be useful. And then I just wanted to ask if there's any way that any of us can be helpful in all of these outreach efforts, that you've listed here, sharing with our communities or those we're connected with, and the best way to do that.
If there are events, if there's, that we could attend, if we can provide any sort of information, tabling, if there's topics potentially that are neutral that we can cover at an event that we provide information. Yeah, that's that we always want that sort of information. If there's a group that potentially is new, that we haven't had any contact with, that we would appreciate that, so we reach out to them and probably try to establish a relationship. So yeah, and just even if you're not sure if we work with a group or attending an event or if we have certain materials, just let me know and just ask.
Okay, and even the specific ones that you detailed out here, if we want more information on those so that we can share those out with our networks, do we just reach out to you for details?
Like the contact info?
Yeah, I'm looking through which ones specifically because there were a couple that I noted that, I might like to send that out to some people that I know. I can't recall what it was specifically, but just more details, just reach out to you if we wanted to forward some of the efforts that you all are doing.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Dye?
Thank you. To reach a little bit here. Director Arntz, I enjoyed our little brainstorming session last time about the voter digital information pamphlet. I'm glad to see your Go Green campaign. Have you considered leveraging your high school ambassadors to help get the word out since they're digital natives?
At this point, no. We're more focused on the ambassadors providing information to their peers on registering to vote and voting. We're not trying to add right now Go Green into those conversations, into that outreach. We can consider it, but right now the impetus of that program is to really get the potential young voters registered and get them engaged.
Yeah, I think, it might be a really good demographic since they're already online and they probably think everyone else should be, and maybe they can convince their parents to be. And you're going to include in the messaging, like we talked last time, what the total cost, the savings would be to the city if people convert, like what the total cost of mailing out the voter information pamphlet in paper form.
I mean, potentially, we haven't finalized to that detail yet. Potentially, yeah, I can't say for certain.
Okay. And then I think we had a discussion last time about, we were talking about voters getting information versus per residence. So right now, if somebody, I saw your report mentioned 300,000 email addresses. So this is to individual voters. So if an individual voter says, yes, sign me up for the digital voter information pamphlet, does that still mean that other people in the household will get a copy?
Yeah, so the state guide is per household, the local guide is per voter.
Okay. So another thought would be to include messaging around, you can opt in and someone in your house can still keep it. And that way you can kind of naturally get it down to per resident. And then I don't remember if you answered this question last time. What was your estimate on what percentage now have opted in for the digital voter information?
I don't know if I gave a percent. I think the number's around, say, 30,000. So out of 500,000 voters, what is that?
10%.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you. 8%. It's not bad. You haven't really Yeah, without promoting it, it's probably organically.
We've had previous times we've outreached and try to get voters to go to the digital book. So it's not the first time we've done this.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Did anyone else? Okay. I had a couple of things. This is President Stone. So obviously I was very excited about several components of this month's report. I just had a few specific questions. Well, I had one question about the RFP that you mentioned, which I did, full disclosure, I did share with some community groups that I knew and was really excited to read it. I just was curious how many folks have applied thus far. You may not know off the top of your head.
I'm not going to say, actually, because it closes on Friday, so I don't want to.
Fair. Makes sense, actually. Thanks. So then just moving on to the page 3, the voter notification program. So I had a bunch of questions pertaining to this. Obviously, I think this is phenomenal. We've talked about this a lot over the last several months or even the last year. And I'm also very glad to see the multilingual component of this. So the methods for notification, there were a couple things that I specifically wanted to call out. One is just folks who may be housing insecure and who may not have digital access. So there were a couple things I was thinking about as it pertains to the tool, because that sounds really phenomenal. The yes, no questions, the link to being able to, you get the notification card and then you go onto a website and you answer a bunch of questions and it says, are you eligible? I am curious if you are considering also doing a paper version of that, that's like a tree of some kind, like, one of those silly things like, yes, you go here, no, you go there, that can be distributed to folks like the prisoner legal services and some of the community partners. And same goes for the notice cards as a kind of not so much personalized to hey, Robin Stone, did you know that you might be eligible to register to vote, but more like a general thing that people may be eligible to vote and don't know. So would those maybe more paper-based resources potentially be available for community groups and other departments to distribute as well?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we can just email the templates to
Awesome.
them. Yeah.
That's great because I do know a lot of folks, may not be using digital, using email and things like that. So anything that's printed, that we can distribute would be awesome. And then the other question I had is about data. So I know in the last election, in the primaries, we talked about how this type of data we didn't have access to yet. Does this now mean that in, let's say, 2024, we will be able to see how many folks were eligible, how many folks registered, and how many actually voted? Is that something we would be able to review in the new kind of numbers that the commission had asked for prior to the primaries?
For justice involved?
Sorry, to the midterm. Yes.
I think so. Yeah, because I haven't seen the files from the state yet. I think last week was actually the first time that we received the file. If it wasn't last week, it was the week before. So I'm assuming those are discrete files that we could continue to pull data from. So I would think so.
Okay, cool. Obviously, if it's not feasible, it's not feasible. It just would be, now that now that the department is getting access to this information, I thought that would be great. Those are mine, but I'm very, very happy to see some of this stuff. So
Thank you.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Hi, thank you, Director Arnson, for your comprehensive report, as always. Just a quick question about the department has been exploring the use of local city-approved marketers to assist with the reach of the Go Green campaign and future elections messaging. Is that around social media that you would be doing, or is that more comprehensive?
It'd be more comprehensive.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, and so are you looking at issuing an RFP? Do you have it in the money in this budget, or was it going to go in next year's, or how's that going to work?
We would try to do it this year,
Uh-huh,
and we need to know what options are available and what is possible
right,
as far as vendors are concerned. So I don't have a lot of concrete
okay,
information to give you right now
okay,
about that.
okay. It'd be great if you could do it just for social media, just to dip your toes in, because if you don't have somebody on staff doing that, it's hard because, and even if you do, that person gets pulled in different directions.
Yeah.
So it would be great if you had a more robust social media campaign for those that look at that sort of thing. Not me, of course. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else? I actually had one more question, Director Ernst. This is President Stone again. I was just curious how those in person, some of the outreach team things in the neighborhood, some of the fairs and things like that, how that's going in terms of registration, knowing that it's so far out. Are you seeing folks register? Are you getting actually some pretty good participation? I'm just mostly just curious.
We get some registrations. We don't, I mean, a lot of people that go to the fairs and events are already registered or they don't want to register. And what the main thing is people they have questions about the process, about the election. That's really the main takeaway that people get from this, more so than being registered, is just us being available to answer questions and provide information.
Thank you. That's really
And
helpful.
being a presence, consistently at those sites.
That's awesome. Thanks. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for the director? Okay, very swift. Thank you, Director Arntz. We will now take public comment on the director's report.
Okay, I do not see any hands raised.
Awesome. I will then close out agenda item 3 and move to agenda item number 4, Commissioners' Reports. Discussion and possible action and Commissioners' Reports for topics not covered by another item on this agenda. Meetings with public officials, oversight and observation activities, long-range planning for commission activities and areas of study, proposed legislation which affects election, and others. And I will open it up. Yeah, Vice President Jordanek.
So I have a few things to report. For starters, or actually, had you already announced the BOPEC?
No, not yet, but you can go ahead.
Okay, so I guess the current plan is for the BOPEC committee to be meeting, sometime soon. So my current plan is for the BOPEC to meet before our next meeting in April. And one of the topics for that meeting will be to discuss the racial equity update that Director Arntz mentioned in the previous item. And we can also start discussing other topics like things like what any website changes we would like to have, or how to conduct our performance evaluations in the future. And on a separate topic, I wanted to just say one thing about our new meeting page. One of the new features I just learned about is that when it comes to posting our recordings on our meeting pages, that the new SF.gov website supports transcripts for accessibility, which is unique to the when you have a YouTube video. It actually displays the transcript alongside. So if you go to our last meeting, you can see that how that's displayed there, but you have to scroll down to the end of the agenda. And I also double checked about the topic of web page translations, which came up at the last meeting. And I think the way it works is that automatically it will show a Google Translate version at the top, which is, I believe, an auto-generated translation. So it's not totally accurate. But if you would like to have a better translation, you could just manually request that, and they kind of do that on an as-needed basis. So, so that's a little update there. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention some news is that in this past, I think it was in the past week, the city of Redondo Beach, which is in Southern California, adopted ranked choice voting. I think the vote was around 70%. And one of the interesting things there is that their voting system vendor is Hart Intercivic, who has recently submitted a system for state certification. So that could be the second voting system vendor in California that supports ranked choice voting. And it's a little bit indirectly related to what's happening in San Francisco because in the past, Hart has not been allowed to bid on our RFPs. Maybe Director Ernst, maybe you can confirm this if it's true that because they're based in Texas, the city's not allowed to do business with them. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, but I also read recently that in the media, the board is, I guess, reconsidering some of those laws around the city contracting. But it's not super relevant. Just I'm not sure if the board would actually change things, and also they're not an open source vendor. But I just did want to mention that to the commission. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Vice President Jordanek. I'll share a few items. This is President Stone. So as Vice President Jordanek mentioned, we did call a BOPEC meeting, which for folks that are not familiar, that is the Budget and Oversight Committee of the Elections Commission, and Vice President Jordanek will chair that committee for the year with Commissioners Lavolsi and Hayden Crowley as members as well. And I'm really excited to have them join and be able to work on some of these issues that we don't have necessarily all the time on our one Wednesday a month meetings, including racial equity. And obviously, I've also broadened that in many meetings to include diversity, inclusion, belonging, and justice. So hopefully that can be incorporated as well. But also looking at some of the areas that we had prioritized over the last year, in addition to thinking about upcoming priorities. The second was the website, and then the third was the process, which Vice President Jordanek had already mentioned. But really, one of the processes that I've been kind of mentioning over the last few months, as it pertains to thinking about how we operate, is that by the end of the year, I hope to have a little bit of at least a framework of some rules of order for our body. So thinking about, how do we operate? What is the structure of things that we can have a lot of these processes all in one place. It may be ambitious to think that can happen by the end of the year, but at least we'll give it our best shot. And then, so that's it as it pertains to BOPEC. The remote public comment as a citywide issue is something that came up in conversation in the last meeting. So I did draft a letter that I had considered distributing to other commissions that also Vice President Jordanek had reviewed. But after following the Board of Supervisors discussions, and reviewed the recommendations that came down from the city administrator's office. Ultimately, I think that the city is in a good position for people to follow those rules. And the Board of Supervisors, it doesn't appear to be focused on making any changes that would apply to all commissions. Their focus has been on what they're going to do within their own body. So I ultimately made the judgment call to focus on us. And if it comes up again, I will raise that and welcome anyone else to raise that as well. The last thing I wanted to just give everyone a little bit of a heads up on is that I'm considering calling a special meeting in the summer. I know everyone is probably rolling their eyes, but the idea is to have it be not strenuous, but more of a opportunity for us to have some time together. So usually, from my understanding, although I've only had one summer on this body, there may be 1 month over the summer where the commission does not meet. And whether it's that month or a different one, the idea is to call it something to the effect of a retreat. It's something previous commissions have done, especially in really kind of pivotal moments in the body. And it's no secret that in the last year, there's been a lot going on. And so I thought this might be a good opportunity for us to kind of do some casual bonding, and also potentially maybe tour the warehouse at Pier 31 with the director, who I've spoken to briefly about this, and potentially talk about some other strategic priorities. There is no definitive date. I wanted to give everyone a heads up that this may happen, and I would like to hear from folks if there are, weeks or months that absolutely won't work. I know we all have really busy schedules, so I welcome you to share those now, or offline. That works. And obviously, I will provide proper notice to the public and everyone here. But it's March and the summer is many months away. So, okay. Any last comments? Okay, let's move to public comment.
Okay, so there are 2 hands raised, or 3 hands raised. So we have a commenter calling by phone. So you are unmuted. And you have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Hello to elections commissioners and Director Arntz. My name's Stephen Hill. I've been involved in the ranked choice voting issue for many years. And the thing I wanted to bring to your attention, we have a new project where we're going around getting input from many political leaders, political organizations, asking them how can we improve local democracy. Should we add public financing to things like school board elections? It's a whole big agenda, not just having to do with ranked choice voting. But one consistent message that I'm hearing from a number of different organizations and individuals is that there are still quite a few people, especially in different communities, that are confused by ranked choice voting. And when you dig down and ask, what is it the confusion about? It used to be they knew how to rank, they just didn't really know how the ballots were counted. But now there seems to be a fair amount of confusion in some communities. Like if you put your favorite candidate 3 times, does that help them? If you put more than one candidate in your first ranking, does that somehow weight your ballot a certain way? And so voters, when they walk in to vote, are just really kind of confused. Particularly, I've been hearing that from some people in the Chinese community and other communities. And so what I wanted to bring to your attention is whether there would be some way that the Elections Commission, in conjunction, of course, with Director Arntz and his department, to do an evaluation of how what is being done for educating about ranked choice voting. We did a lot in the early years of ranked choice voting, and then I think after the initial few elections, we thought, okay, we can let that go a little bit. And I think now we have a lot of new voters, people who have moved to San Francisco don't know how ranked choice voting works, and it might be time to just really re-examine what has worked for voter education, what hasn't worked, what can we do better. The department has been doing a great job in many ways, and so I think it's more a matter of we've been using ranked choice voting now for, believe it or not, almost 20 years. It will be 20 years in 2024, and it's just time to maybe look at it and see how can we make it better, how can we make sure it's up to date for now rather than 20 years ago. For example, the department used to, I'm not sure if it still does, it used to do a mailing to communities. And of course, when you do a mailing, you reach a lot of people, but you can only get so much on a postcard with 3 or 4 languages. So you reach a lot of people, but the quality of information is not so great. But if you give money to community groups, the quality information and presentations is much better, but you don't reach as many people. So what combination of mailings and outreach to community groups is really the ideal combination? These sorts of things I think would be really good.
3 minutes is up.
Okay. And so at a future meeting, if there would be some way to have an agenda item on this, I'd love to be able to participate in some way and hear what everyone thinks about this.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have I'm just trying to mute. Okay, we have Mr. Turner. I'm unmuting you.
Yes, thank you,
3 minutes.
Commissioner Jordanik. I just wanted to second the caller in front of me, Mr. Hill, and but also with an adjunct to that, we should also be educating not only the public but also as the commission goes through changes. It would be great if the commissioners also were presented the up-to-date information about ranked choice voting and also its interaction with open source software. There are many experts in the election system community that want to make sure that if we are using ranked choice voting, which obviously we are in San Francisco, that it is not placed within a proprietary software code environment, as we know that recounts are more cumbersome in a ranked choice environment, if not impossible. And so you're completely reliant upon the software count. And we want to make sure that software is appropriate software. Back to the Little Hoover Commission report. If the commissioners are not familiar with that, I think that should be mandatory reading at this point, along with the current information. Regarding Hart Civic, which was mentioned, you know, what could possibly go wrong with a secret software voting system company out of Texas, you know, coming into San Francisco, other than, you know, obviously we're not going to make the difference in 2024 with the Trump coming up for another election. But we want to set precedent for the United States and get California in order. Now we're seeing other states move ahead of California, which has done a lot of the work on the open source front regarding elections. And now we're seeing New Hampshire moving in front of us, Mississippi, and to be candid, it's embarrassing that we're in this position where we still can't get ourselves together around this issue. And San Francisco, like Los Angeles, bears a lot of responsibility. If the commission is also not familiar with what happened in Los Angeles, $3 million was dedicated toward an open source project there at the urging of Open Voting Consortium. And that $300 million went missing. And again, back to Commissioner Bernholtz recusing herself, that was OSET that came into Los Angeles, burned through that $300 million. And a lot of people have cried foul and fraud regarding that $300 million going south, and Los Angeles still does not have an open source voting system. So we're
Your 3
looking at
minutes
San
is up.
Francisco. Thank you very much for your time and your dedication to democracy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if any callers had their hand raised, please raise it again. I put one down, but I don't know if that was Mr. Hill or not. I don't see any other hands raised. I think we're
Great, okay. Thank you, public commenters. That will close out the agenda item number 4, commissioners' reports. And so as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to move agenda item number 8 to agenda item number 5, letter regarding security issues. So discussion and possible action regarding the DVS order privacy flaw affecting San Francisco's Dominion voting system and reporting of potential similar voting system security issues to the Department of Elections. And I will hand it over to Vice President Jordanik.
okay. Thank you, President Stone. So for this agenda item, there were 2 parts to the conversation that I wanted to discuss. The first part is the idea of a security.txt file, which came up last month. And then secondly was the letter to the Secretary of State and some similar letters. So first, on the topic of the security.txt, I attached to the packet a document that describes what it is. And it's an internet standard that provides a way to publicize how security researchers can communicate security issues to an organization like the department. And I did check that neither the city's website, sf.gov, or the department's website have one. So, so this is something that the department could set up. I guess, Director Ernst, the SF elections domain is under the department's control. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and then the, of course, the city's domain is not under the department's control. So if we wanted the city's website to do it, we would need to talk with them separately. So I know just recently across the bay, the city of Oakland was hit by a ransomware attack. So, I mean, I think it could be good from a citywide perspective. So if we wanted to, we could maybe discuss the idea of also communicating with whoever's responsible for the city's domain. But, and then secondly, at the last meeting, we, when I started the agenda item, I had raised the idea of writing a letter to the Secretary of State. And based on the discussion we had and in talking with Dr. Halderman and Director Arntz, it's not just the Secretary of State that didn't inform the department about the vulnerability, but there was also Dominion, who had sent an advisory to the department, which did not actually mention the vulnerability, and also the federal agencies, the EAC and CISA, the cybersecurity agency, didn't notify the department. So I thought what we could do is we could discuss the idea of sending a similar letter to those two organizations or three organizations. So I mean, partly, I think it's important for the federal agencies to know that if they have a process for getting this information down to the local jurisdictions, that in this case, their process didn't work. And if they don't have a process, it would be good for them to know that, you know, it might be worth having a process. So, so I thought we could just maybe discuss the draft letters. They were posted to the packet on Thursday, and then I did make a couple edits since then. The most recent ones are underlined if people had seen the letters before that. So I guess you just open it up to commissioner comments.
Commissioner Dye?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, would this, who would be signing this letter, since there's a reference to the commission authorized me?
I was thinking of the president.
Okay, I think that's appropriate. And then the other question I had is, will you be snail mailing it as well as emailing it?
I mean, that's up to, are you asking me or, okay, that's up to
Sorry.
us.
Taking notes, I missed you looking at me, apologies.
I was thinking just for ease, we could just mail it, or sorry, email it, but I think there's no reason we couldn't do both. But it's certainly, it's also what people have time for, but, or whatever people prefer.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley?
Thank you, Commissioner, President Stone and Commissioner Jordanek. Question, there's a lot of material here, and I am a little bit confused, but it seems like this letter, you have the questions at the very end. And I think then you have a bunch of stuff before about our position on open source voting. Was that the agreement that the letter was going to talk about open source voting, or were we just going to talk about the questions that we had about the specific lack of notification?
So I think, well, at the last meeting, I'd suggested the idea of drafting a letter, and this is what I came up with. I thought that, I mean, we could take this letter as an opportunity to educate the agencies about open source and how, you know, one of the advantages is that issues like these would be caught a lot earlier. And if people don't want to include that information, we could remove it. But I do think it's a good opportunity to educate these organizations.
Okay, but it's not what we talked about at the previous meeting, that we would incorporate that, or did we?
Well, we did talk about, with Dr. Halderman how if it had been open source, we would have caught that issue. But we didn't really spend a lot of time talking about what the letter would contain.
Well, I think we did. We did just say that you would talk, that the letter would address these questions, which I think you've done a very good job of addressing the flaws in the system. I'm not totally comfortable with the whole open source issue. I think I understand your point completely, Commissioner Jordanek, but because I'm still somewhat new to this commission, we haven't had a full hearing on open source unless you want to count all of the public comment we've received about it. And I see your point of view on the open source, but I've not heard the other side at all. And so I'm not sure also, okay, let me just say, I'm not sure that this is what we agreed to, number one. And number two, if you want to get your point across, I recommend making it one page and going straight to the very end on the Elections Commission with the questions, because it just takes too long to get to the point. It's just my experience that these are very busy people. Their staffers are the folks that are going to read it. We want an answer. I mean, we'll be educating their staffers. I'm just going to tell you, they're not going to read it. If they read it, they'll read these questions. And if we want to get a prompt response, my recommendation would be to give a brief, like the second paragraph is good. I mean, I don't want to pick this whole thing apart. Because you've spent a lot of time on this, and I really appreciate all the time that you spend on all of these things. You're extraordinarily thoughtful. But I do think that my understanding is we agreed that you would write a letter that would ask about the flaws. And my feeling is that's what the letter should be. And my recommendation is that it should stay to one page.
Okay, yeah, I just in terms of agreeing, I mean, we discussed it, but we didn't have a vote or anything on what it would include. I'm certainly open to, revising the letters. If we don't want to include those paragraphs about open source, we can remove them. But it has been our policy since 2015 to support open source voting. So it's consistent with, what this body has been in support of. But in terms of the length of the letter, I mean, these are agencies that have many, many people working for them. They routinely review very long documents on all kinds of subjects. I don't think it hurts to include more information. In the first paragraph, it does say the questions are at the end, so they could skip through that stuff if they want to. But, and also part of this is for the public record. I mean, when people are seeing this information, it's a chance for us to educate people reading the letter on things that are important to this commission.
Vice President Jordanek, I don't mean to be rude, but I want to give other folks an opportunity to also jump in who haven't had the chance to yet. And then obviously would love to come back to you as well. Did anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Barnholz.
Thank you. I'd like to second the comment made by Commissioner Hayden Crowley. I think what Commissioner Jordanek here has done, and he's done it very well, has actually led to a letter that might result in less attention, not more, because it's two related but not similar sets of content. And I would very much agree that a letter that includes paragraph 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3, and the questions is what we agreed to support at the meeting. And the information about open source is accurate, important, and a good opportunity to educate, but what it actually is slipping into a document agreed to do one thing, a set of points and information that I think will simply distract from that end. I also not sure that there are comments in here which I don't believe this commission has in any way endorsed. So I think it would be better to just remove it. Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Jardonic, for drafting the letters.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernholz. Would anyone else like to comment? Commissioner Dye?
Yeah, I personally don't have an objection to the inclusion of some of this, although I do believe something more succinct would get more attention. So I don't disagree with the previous commissioner's comments on that point. A suggestion might be to take some of the references to voting system standards, for example, which they ought to know, and just refer to them by the code number and maybe include it as an appendix, because you're really quoting their own code back to them, and so that would shorten it by quite a bit. And then I also think it would not hurt to put the questions up front, just to be real clear. Here are the questions that we're trying to seek an answer to, and then here's some background, and we are referencing the state's own code, and just include it, include it as an appendix, maybe, after the letter. So I think that would accomplish the goal of making it tighter.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Vice President Jardonic, did you want to respond? I know I kind of cut you off earlier.
I'm fine with all the suggestions. Yeah, I do appreciate that, people are supportive of the idea of the letter and the questions. I'm happy to remove the paragraphs that are about open source. And then I can also move the references to the voting system standards to an appendix. That's information's only in the Secretary of State letter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to make those changes. And I think it's clear which paragraphs are about open source. It's, the ones starting incidentally, and then on basically until right before the questions start. And I can also move the questions up to towards the beginning.
Commissioner Dye?
Yeah, I think you can still reference open source because that is something that Dr. Halderman said. And I think that point is still valid. But probably some of the more detailed stuff may not be necessary, and in the interest of brevity could be taken out. But I don't think it's wrong to make the point that if this were an open source system, it would have been found.
Yeah,
Vice President Jardonic.
well, so I'm happy either way. Obviously, I would prefer there to be more, but I think because Commissioner Bernholz and Commissioner Hayden-Crowley raised the point, I would kind of want to look to them to see what they would be comfortable with if it's mentioned at all. But it's kind of up to them, I think.
Commissioner Hayden-Crowley?
I don't feel like it's up to me. It was just a recommendation, but I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Jardonic, that we have a policy of supporting open source voting, but the fact remains we don't have an open source voting system in San Francisco. So speaking to them about open source voting is not, we're not a first person experience, I guess is my point. And maybe that's what Commissioner Bernholz, I don't want to even say anything more because I think I totally get what you're doing and I respect it. I just think we agreed to a letter that would ask questions and we should stay on topic. And I also think in my experience as a communicator, and I know people go through a lot of different, read a lot of letters, but I've read a lot of letters and I just like people to get to the point because I don't have that much time in the day. And this is what we agreed to. That would be my recommendation.
So this is President Stone. Thank you everyone for the discussion, and I've been taking a lot of notes and thinking about it. I want to just clarify also what folks are, if we're focused on just the letter to the Secretary of State, because obviously there are other recipients included in the packet. And I think that that's a separate conversation that we should also have of should we be directing, who should we be directing these to, one way or another. At this point, I'm not comfortable with, as president, with this specific letter, just based on the conversation, but also some of the language definitely does not align with how I would necessarily position something to the Secretary of State's office. And so I would just want to be kind of clear about that. One recommendation I have that I would like the body to consider is if, and Vice President Jordanek as well, like your input on this, if you want to, based on the conversation we had here, and perhaps you and I working offline, do another draft for the commission to review and approve before the next meeting. I recognize that you probably want to move faster on this, but you know, knowing that we don't have an immediate election coming up where we need to be immediately concerned, I thought that might be a good approach where everyone can, where we could take the feedback, redraft. I can also provide thoughts on, you know, tone of voice from me so that we can present an alternative to everyone. So there's that. And then also, I'd like to talk just a little bit about the idea of reaching out to Dominion, because I want to be kind of careful about this, and I would like to hear everyone's thoughts. Yeah, I'd like to hear what people think about reaching out to Dominion. I obviously want to be considerate of the fact that while we are, we do want to ask questions, we also are, and similarly with the Secretary of State's office, like we do also want to work with these folks. I mean, Dominion is our provider, and being thoughtful of how we talk to them and how that could affect the relationship with the director and the department, I think is in the best interest of the city. And so I would like to hear what other people have to say in regards to that. It's not to say that we don't reach out to them, it's just being mindful of how. So I would be interested to hear what folks think about that, in addition to the proposal for the draft letters. Yeah, Commissioner Lavalsi.
I have a question. This is Commissioner Lavalsi. What are your reservations about the letter to Dominion and the reason for not putting it in?
Oh, this is President Stone. It wasn't so much the letter, like not writing a letter. It's more just exactly what I was saying about the relationship with the department, because they are our election system provider, and they are the only one that we are currently working with. And, you know, having those types of relationships and contractor relationships, we want to be mindful of the impact on the director and the department and their ability to work with Dominion, if we're making sure we're not, and I'm not suggesting that this would undermine it, but just being thoughtful of that, which I think probably goes to what Commissioner Dye had brought up at the last meeting about having the director's input. But recognizing that there is a relationship there that we have to be kind of cautious of, and knowing that, you know, relationships and contractor relationships are a give and take. So it's less like reservations about this specific letter. It's just a consideration that I think hadn't been brought up that I'd like people's input in. And then also, I invite Director Arntz if you have additional thoughts as well. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Lavalsi. Commissioner Dye?
So first, a comment on the Election Assistance Commission and CISA. I do think it's appropriate to send them a letter as well, because they are responsible for these issues at a national level, and they were also informed by Dr. Halderman, and they also did not inform the department. So I think that's completely appropriate. With regard to Dominion, I mean, we're their customer. And it's very reasonable for us to expect, software that is not defective. And I personally, this was the first time I actually saw the notice from Dominion, which I agree with Vice President Jordanik's comment at the last meeting. I hadn't seen it at that time, but he commented that it was really vague. And I completely agree. I mean, after reading that note, it would not have been apparent to me that I would have had to do anything were I in Director Arndt's position. I thought it was deliberately obfuscated. And so I think it's quite reasonable to demand that a vendor be transparent. If they have a bug, let us know about it. Let us know when you're going to fix it. That's a very reasonable request. And don't put out a really vague notice that I, really don't understand what to do, right? So, to me, this is a customer-vendor relationship. It's not something we need to tiptoe around.
I will come back to you, Vice President Jordanik. Commissioner Bernholz had her hand up.
Thank you, President Stone. I on the letter to Dominion itself, I agree with Commissioner Dye. I also think there's some power in sending a letter to Dominion and noting that similar letters have been sent to the Secretary of State and the EAC. I think it's important to let them know the degree to which we're paying attention to this. So I just, that's my comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernholz. Commissioner Hayden-Crowley.
Thank you, President Stone. I would agree with Commissioner Dye and Commissioner Bernholz. I think just if I'm to extrapolate from your comments, I just think we need to be respectful of the relationship with Director Arntz. I think that's all you were saying, but I think it's totally reasonable to ask the vendor and keep Director Arntz in the loop.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayden-Crowley. I'm sorry, I also skipped you, Vice President Jordanik. I apologize.
It's okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention, because this may have been before you're on the commission, President Stone, but I think it was a couple years ago that the commission wrote a letter to Dominion. It was sent by Commissioner Bernholz. This was in reference to a reporter that for the San Francisco Examiner quoted the Dominion's, our sales representative at Dominion, saying something that was disrespectful towards San Francisco voters. So then we wrote a letter to Dominion asking the representative to explain, and I think we may have invited him to come to a meeting or something. So it's not without precedent for us to send a letter to Dominion, but that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. A point of clarification, I voted on that letter, so I was on the commission. I do recall.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Does anyone else? So this is President Stone again. I really appreciate everyone providing that input and glad there's some general consensus. How do folks feel about the second question, or it was really the first question I had asked, which is the idea of Vice President Jordanik taking some of the feedback that we've discussed today, potentially drafting a new version and working with me offline on that new version, and then presenting it for the commission's review and approval at the next meeting. Commissioner Hayden-Crowley.
I make a motion that we accept your suggestion to work with Commissioner Jordanik offline following this meeting, not directly following this meeting, and edit the draft and disseminate it, I guess, to the commission prior to the next meeting so that we can, are we allowed to do that, DCA?
We'd have to make it part of the packet. We would just
Yes.
include it as a packet
Okay,
item.
and then would we be voting on it at the next meeting, or can we agree to send it prior to the meeting?
I think we would have to vote on it.
Okay,
Unless your motion is, unless we're going to make an amendment to your motion, which is that
I
you wouldn't
haven't
want.
finished my motion.
Oh, okay. Well, an alternative, to answer your question, you could also motion that the body does not need to vote on it, and just that there is interest in the vice president and myself to work offline and work in the interest of what was shared today.
I would include that in my motion because I think that is the most efficient way of handling this. So let me restate the motion. I am moving that President Stone work with Commissioner Jordanek offline to redraft the letter and distribute it to the commission following this meeting, and that we have the opportunity to provide feedback, but that ultimately President Stone and Vice President Jordanek will make the decision based on our recommendations to agree on the letter and send it to the Secretary of State and to Dominion and to the various CCs.
So I have just want to make one point of clarification or point of information, which is just that we won't be able to have feedback provided to us outside of the meeting because of the Brown Act. So it would have to be either authorizing us to take what was shared today and then giving us, authority to draft it based on that, or the two of us work on it and present a new draft that would be voted on at the next meeting.
All right, I'm going to put a lot of trust in you. And I just don't want to talk about this at the next meeting. That's my motion, that we get this done following the meeting.
Second.
Great, thank you. Just before we take public comment, I just want to confirm with Vice President Jordanek that you agreed to do that. What was motioned, which is that we would work offline to incorporate the feedback provided today, and then the commission would give us authority to send the letters without having to vote on what those new letters are.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I think, yes, I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion before we move to public comment? Okay, let's move to public comment.
Okay, so there are two hands raised. Unmute you, Mr. Turner. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, commissioners. Because of my health issues, I'm unfortunately not prone to attend meetings in the future with this commission. But I do want to mention in this moment that sometimes you just have to be brave. And the conversations I'm hearing here appear to be fear-based. Dominion has already said that they think San Francisco voters are stupid and that the election commission doesn't know anything about elections. So it doesn't get much worse than that. I think you should probably not be in fear of offending Steve Bennett and the folks at Dominion. That's my personal opinion on this. Regarding your letters, yes, send it to the EAC, to CISA, to the DHS. They can always be reminded, though they're very familiar with the battle between Microsoft and open source systems. Regarding Commissioner Hayden Crowley, I would just caution the commissioners to not fall into the trap that is set up here by OSET to remove any conversation amongst the commissioners or on agendas regarding open source. This is the biggest issue in the United States right now, how to secure our election systems so that we have voter confidence. And we're spiraling downward here. We're never going to have public confidence with bad voting system software. And San Francisco's had the ability to lead. A lot of people spent 20 years setting this up for you to do the right thing. And for everyone to cower now is again embarrassing. It's not what San Francisco County or city stands for nationally. We're supposed to be the beacon on the hill for democracy. And this is, unfortunately, I just have to say, embarrassing conversation. Professor Halderman was candid and frank when he said this would not have happened in an open source environment. To cower away from telling the truth just plays into the hands of some very bad people that desire instability for the United States. That includes not only possibly inside interference people that are corrupting this process, but also outside interference folks in other countries. So please stand up, be brave, do the right thing, consult your own consciences, self-educate on the issue of open source software regarding elections, since you're on this commission and you're in the hot seat on this and can show leadership not only to the county, but to the state and to the rest of the country. So please try to stand up. Sometimes
5 seconds.
You just have to be brave. And we're seeing this affectation of this commission as a
Your
direct
time is up,
result
Mr. Turner.
of corporate corruption. And I applaud you for your dedication to democracy. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Thank you. Next public commenter. The name is George. You are unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. I said a month ago, well, I requested that, I wanted to take a look at Dr. Halderman's solution. And I talked to Chris about this 2 weeks ago in San Leandro. And I just wanted to, I said I would get back to you, and I got back to Chris, but I wanted to reiterate to the commission. It's a really good solution. I looked at it. I don't really see any downside. And I had an election expert that I talked to. He looked at it. He was very much in favor of it. Knows Dr. Halderman, knows the credibility of his work. So it's excellent because it does exactly what he said. It effectively scrambles the order of the ballot records in the cast vote record database. So for example, President Stone, well, let's say that you have you say the ballot stubs, and there's still and you have 4 ballot stubs in an election, and you wrote down the numbers. You can still look them up in the cast vote record database, but they might be, for example, the first one might show up in line 1000 of the database, and the next one might show up in line 23,506 of the database, et cetera, et cetera. So it effectively scrambles the order, which gives it a level of security from people being able to reverse engineer who voted when, which is what he was talking about. But at the same time, it still preserves the transparency while preserving privacy, so that you, President Stone, can look up in the cast vote record database. You can still look up by the ballot ID that you have on your stub, and verify. So can any citizen in San Francisco verify that your vote was recorded the way you cast it for everything you cast it for? So I fully support that, and I just want to let you all know it. And I want to thank the commission for going to the trouble of inviting Dr. Halderman to present this excellent, first to make people aware of the problem, and then also present what is an excellent solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. We are going to now vote on the motion, on Commissioner Hayden Crowley's motion that I, President Stone, will work with Vice President Jordanic offline to redraft the letters based on the feedback shared today, and grant us the authority to send it to the 3 recipients included in the packet. So Vice President Jordanic.
Yes.
Commissioner Bernholz.
Yes.
Commissioner Dye.
Aye, but I think there are 4 recipients.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will amend that. Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Yes.
Commissioner LaVolsi.
Yes.
Commissioner Perker.
Yes.
and I, President Stone, am a yes. So with all 7 commissioners voting yes, the motion passes. Great. Thank you, everyone. So is there any further discussion before we close out this agenda item? Yeah, Vice
Yeah,
President
I
Giordano.
just wanted to see, how do people feel about approaching the city's Department of Technology about the security.txt? Would that be something that like one of us should do just on our own, or did we want to
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Commissioner Dye.
Yeah, I nominate you, Chris, to go and approach, I believe his name is Mark Matzman, who's our CISO for the city of San Francisco. I think it's a pretty simple solution. I'm sure he would welcome it.
Okay, yeah, and I don't think we need to vote on that, I could just reach out. Okay, and I just want to thank everyone for, the discussion today, and I think everyone's feedback was very valuable, so thank you.
This is President Stone. I would like to add one quick item. So there's been some conversation about the open source voting, obviously, on this body over the last X amount of months, but also many, many, many years. And so I wanted to make everyone aware that one of the items that Vice President Jordanek and I have been discussing is perhaps in that special meeting over the summer, we do a little bit more of a deep dive to make folks, particularly folks who might be new to open source voting, to the policy, but also just the system, to be able to give kind of a full landscape of the policy in a longer format. So hopefully that should also be helpful for folks to kind of get up to speed, and then also perhaps provide additional documentation that, should commissioners come and go, that will be easily accessible for the next body to kind of pick up where we left off. So I thought that might be of value. Yes, Commissioner Hayden-Crowley.
Thank you, President Stone. It's just a pet peeve. We don't have, and I'm going to lose my train of thought because I'm tired tonight, so I apologize for the fact that I'm so tired. Long day at the office. But back to, what were we talking?
Open source voting,
I swear, I'm sorry.
the retreat, open source voting, doing an overview of it.
Okay, open source voting. It's not the whole open source voting per se and learning more about it. It's the actual power we have to do anything about it. And that's a discussion that we need to have with the DCA here, because we can talk about it till kingdom come, but we really have no money. We don't have any kind of authority to do certain things. And so we can endorse it, but we spend a lot of time on issues that we really have no authority on, and we're here till midnight. And I really do think that one of the discussions we need to have at some point is, particularly with the DCA weighing in, and maybe we need to hire authority even in the city attorney's office, what power do we have? Because I'm seeing us drifting into areas, and we'll talk about this as we go. I think there's some overreach going on here. And while our intentions are really good and admirable, at the end of the day, I remind you, we are the appointed body of 7 different electeds who all have different agendas, and they were elected by the people. We were not elected by them. And we have a certain amount of privilege and authority, but it is contained. And so we spend a lot of time on things that at the end of the day, I don't know how. I do think that we need to have an honest conversation about what we really have authority over, is what I'm saying, because we are investing a lot of time into things that may go nowhere because of the way that the bylaws are set up and the city charter is set up. So that's.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayden-Crowley. Is anyone else? And I welcome that feedback. Okay, so we're going to close out agenda item number 5. And with that, we're going to move to agenda item number 6, possible closed session concerning the Director of Elections 2020 2022 performance evaluation continued from February 15th, and public employee appointment / hiring of the commission secretary. So first, we're going to move to public comment, and also we're going to move to public comment and all matters pertaining to both of these, both the 6D and 6E pertaining to closed session.
Okay, there's one hand raised. Mr. Turner, I am unmuting you. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you again, commissioners, for indulging me. And I realize I am just speaking on behalf of the public, but I do appreciate you bringing in experts like Dr. Holderman, and also we would encourage you to pay attention to not only your own vice president here and his great working knowledge of the open source election system issue, but also the group Voting Works, who is the first in the country to actually deploy an open source system in, of all places, Mississippi instead of San Francisco. The reason why I'm commenting at this point is because regarding the director's evaluation, the flaw in the ointment, unfortunately here, because he does seem to do a decent job administering elections, is Director Arnst. Director Arnst has personally stalled the open source voting system deployment in San Francisco and the trial of the system by providing disinformation to the Secretary of State's office and basically slowing everything down. We believe at the direction of Dominion. And of course, that's why we talk about corruption. Microsoft and Dominion and the vendors and people that sell secret software with licenses, proprietary, they don't want open source anywhere in any conversation ever. This creeps into our own board of supervisors. Previously, we had the luxury of people like Tom Amiano, who would stand up, and more recently, Shaman Walton. But it's a tough road. And I mean, just all hell breaks loose upon the politicians to try to advocate for open source software in elections. It's the third rail. But the reason it's important is we have to have public confidence in our elections. San Francisco is the best and the brightest in the country, arguably. It's probably not going to completely happen out of Mississippi, but Mississippi went ahead and did the right thing because they needed to in that moment. We may not need to. Maybe we're okay hanging out with Dominion, even though they call us stupid and ridicule the population of San Francisco. But the fact remains, if we are brave and do the right thing, sometimes you have to do that in certain moments of history, like Winston Churchill when he was fighting the Nazis. You have to stand up against white supremacy, corporate control over elections, and I look to you to again consult your conscience and work hard to try and figure this out. Thank you all again for your time.
Okay, thank you. There are no other hands raised.
Okay, so we're now going to move to 6C, vote on whether to meet in closed session to consider item 6D and or item 6E pursuant to California Government Code 54957B and San Francisco Administrative Code 67.10B.
So moved.
Vice President Jordanek.
Yes.
Commissioner Bernholz.
Yes.
Commissioner Dye.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavolsi.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
And I, President Stone, vote yes. So we are now going to move into closed session and return. Yeah, we'll take a minute just to move into closed session. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. We are back in open session at 8:39 p.m. So we have to do G, discussion and vote pursuant to Administrative Code 67.12A on whether to disclose any portion of the closed session. just regarding item 16E. So, do
I'm-
we- yeah,
I move
Commissioner
not
Dye.
to disclose anything in our closed session.
Second. Oh, my apologies. You are
you
disclosing
have to disclose.
something. Yes.
Okay, so outside of what, so I'll
Yes.
we'll rescind the motion for a moment, just to disclose that the commission will be, but I mean, the review.
We're making a conditional offer.
I meant about the review.
We're
Continuing the item.
I know you did disclose that.
Yeah,
Oh,
go.
Okay, sorry, I would like to disclose that the commission authorized me to provide a conditional offer to a potential candidate for our commission secretary. So Commissioner Dye, would you like to make that motion again?
I move that we not disclose anything regarding our continued performance evaluation of the director.
Second.
Okay. Vice President Jordanek,
Yes,
Commissioner Bernholz,
Yes.
Commissioner Dye,
I
Commissioner Hayden Crowley,
Yes.
Commissioner LaVolsi,
Yes.
Commissioner Parker,
Yes.
and I, President Stone, vote yes. So thank you all, and I really appreciate it. I just want to, we're going to close out that agenda item, and I need to make another adjustment to the agenda item, which is we are going to swap the current item 7 with 8. So we're going to go straight into the redistricting process initiative. And I just want to say thank you to our very patient guest speaker for waiting until we got back into open session. We really appreciate it. So agenda item number 8, redistricting process initiative, discussion and possible action regarding the commission's ongoing redistricting process initiative. And I will hand this over to Commissioner LaVolsi and Commissioner Dye.
thank you, President Stone. And perhaps while we're promoting our guest speaker to a panelist, the bio for our guest speaker, Nicholas Heidorn, is in the packet. While he has a very impressive background, the reason we invited him is that he is the author of 2 reports that were included in the packet. The one that was included in the packet last month, The Promise of Fair Maps, hot off the press, and then also the original California Local Redistricting Commission's report, which was published in 2017 and was included in the July 2022 commission packet. We've asked him to join us here very briefly so that he can give us some brief remarks, but really he's here to answer any and all of our remaining questions before we move on to the next phase of our redistricting initiative. So with that, can we make sure that Nicholas can be heard by us? Are you there?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Dye. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we hear
Yes.
you great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, President and Commissioners, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So for the record, my name is Nicholas Heidorn. I run my own consulting firm. And as was mentioned, I recently completed a statewide report on local redistricting on behalf of the League of Women Voters of California, ACLU of California, California Common Cause, and Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, which I'll discuss very briefly with you today. As part of my background, previously I worked for California Common Cause on local redistricting reform, including on the Fair Maps Act, which is the main state law affecting local redistricting. And I also co-founded at Common Cause and McGeorge School of Law, the California Local Redistricting Project, dedicated to studying local redistricting best practices. I'll try and limit my remarks to about 5 minutes, if that's okay. I'll briefly go over some of the results of our recent study, talk a little bit about trends with IRCs, independent redistricting commissions, and then talk briefly about some proposed state legislation going through the process now. So in terms of the study, the Promise of Fair Maps, which is linked to the agenda, came out in January of this year. This was a study where I interviewed around 24 voting rights, civic, and good government organizations across the state that were active in the local redistricting process to hear about their experiences. And in addition to those groups, also spoke with demographers, redistricting consultants, as well as local government staff to kind of get a perspective really on a statewide level of how local redistricting went. So I do want to emphasize that part. While there's a small part of the report touching on San Francisco, my view is really broad, looking at local redistricting broadly, and so is more focused at that high level than speaking specifically to your experience here in San Francisco. The general findings of the report, which are outlined in the executive summary, is that on the positive, redistricting was far more participatory and transparent this cycle than it has been before. That was in part because of state laws requiring more transparency, more public outreach, but also because of remote participation, which was used in many cities in response to the pandemic. So it allowed people with family and work obligations to more fully participate in the process, which was a good thing. Also, we saw much more group mobilization this cycle as people have become more aware of the importance of redistricting and how it has 10-year-long impacts on the quality of representation at the local level. Another finding, more mixed finding that we saw was that the Fair Maps Act created new redistricting criteria that really emphasized trying to keep communities whole. And we saw some mixed results on that. In some communities, these criteria did lead to bringing communities that had been split and bringing them together so that those communities and neighborhoods would be more likely to be listened to in the political process, have fuller representation, but not in all communities. And in fact, repeatedly what we heard is that incumbency protection often thwarted keeping communities of interest whole in spite of clear criteria prioritizing keeping communities whole. The state and really nationally, there was a rather prominent behind the scenes example of that with the leaked audio from Los Angeles's redistricting process, where people got to see incumbents openly discussing, quote, putting people's districts in a blender to chop them up to hurt a political opponent, as well as discussing how empowering certain communities or splitting them could impact the interests of those incumbents and their allies. Another major finding I want to highlight from the report is the success of politically insulated independent redistricting commissions, or IRCs. California is undoubtedly the national leader on redistricting commissions, independent redistricting commissions at the local level. Inspired by the state commission, we saw a huge explosion, which I'll go over next, in the use of independent commissions. The groups that were active this cycle, particularly those that were active in local redistricting where incumbents control the process, as well as where an independent commission controlled the process, really emphasize that the sense that an IRC insulated from the political process was much more deliberative, much more responsive to public comment, and ultimately much more likely to adopt maps that were reflective of communities of interest, particularly of communities of color. Now, I don't want to overstate, IRCs are not flawless. Redistricting involves very, very difficult trade-offs, and often these tough decisions mean that it's pretty rare that everyone will be happy. And indeed, some of the groups that I talked to were not always happy with the decisions, even of independent redistricting commissions. But one of the things that I heard in these discussions is because the process was open, deliberative, there was often more trust and acceptance of that process than a cumbrous legislative process. Finally, just to finalize the last finding of the report, we looked especially at advisory commissions, which tend to be done through political appointment, as well as obviously a small number of IRCs have some political appointees, including San Francisco's. And one of the other findings that came through is that when political appointments are part of the process, it diminishes some of the independence from commissions. This was particularly noticed in advisory commissions. Some of the leaked audio in LA even emphasized that people were directing their commissioners how they wanted them to go on certain ways. Commissioners were being pulled in Los Angeles for not following the desires or sufficiently advocating for the desires of incumbents. And so that political appointment can reduce some of the hope of commissions creating a more independent process that really allows communities to be the guiding force behind how districts are drawn. In terms of recommendations, the report has a number of recommendations, many large and many kind of micro relating to the Fair Maps Act, but a few to highlight. One of the major ones is recommending strengthening the State Fair Maps Act to prevent incumbency protection gerrymandering and to make that more express in state law. Another is to require independent redistricting commissions, politically insulated independent redistricting commissions in all large jurisdictions in the state. Increasing the number of mandatory public hearings and continuing to allow remote testimony in future. And finally, extending the Fair Maps Act to apply to all local governments, not just cities and counties. Now, briefly, I want to discuss just two more things, the trend of IRCs and what that's looking like in the state. And then I'll end by just discussing some state legislation. So at the local level, as I mentioned at the outset, we've seen a real huge explosion in use of independent redistricting commissions at the local level. In the 2010 cycle, there were only 3 IRCs that existed, and that's counting San Francisco's in that. Whereas in this 2020 cycle, there were 22 cities and counties that had independent redistricting commissions. So a huge explosion. And that includes Los Angeles County, San Diego County, cities like San Diego, Oakland, Sacramento, Long Beach. So a lot of the major jurisdictions have shifted this last cycle to independent redistricting commission. And that's a trend that is highly likely to continue. Los Angeles is in the process of going through its own examination of creating an independent commission after scandals in that city. And there are 3 bills in the legislature to create independent redistricting commissions for individual counties and cities at the state level. There's also a bill that I'll touch on later, AB 1248 by Assemblymember Bryan, which would require all jurisdictions with a population of over 300,000 to adopt IRCs. The popularity of IRCs is also evident just in how they fare at the ballot locally. Most IRCs are created by charter amendment. A 2017 study I co-authored found of 17 ballot measures that include either an advisory or an independent commission. 15 of those 17 were successful. And since that 2017 study, there have been at least a half dozen additional primarily independent redistricting commission measures, and I'm not aware of any of them failing. And the last point on that, in terms of voter support or interest in this reform, there was a 2022 poll, so just last year by Capital Weekly, which found that 90% of California voters, including 90% of Democrats and 86% Republicans, agreed with the statement that, quote, all local redistricting should be done by independent commission. In terms of where local redistricting and IRCs are headed, really modern commissions have started to follow a pretty clear pattern. And in terms of good government organizations, there are also certain best practices principles that have emerged at the top. You see this reflected in state legislation and in most of the modern IRC charter amendments that have gone on the ballot. Some commonalities would include no elected official appointments of commissioners using some type of independent process, having qualifying and disqualifying criteria for appointees to the IRC to try and ensure that they themselves have some degree of impartiality and aren't unduly connected with an elected official or political faction. Post-service restrictions on commissioners to ensure that in drawing the lines, they're not kind of looking forward to potentially drawing lines to benefit themselves. And finally, ranked redistricting criteria, generally prioritizing keeping communities and neighborhoods whole, has also been the modern trend, as opposed to just having a list of criteria actually indicating push comes to shove which criterion should dominate. Now, the last thing I wanted to end with, and then I'll open for questions, and I'm happy to discuss the recent report or the prior report. But the last thing is talking about AB 1248. So as I mentioned, this is proposed state legislation going through the process currently. What it essentially would do is set a deadline of March 1st, 2030 for any jurisdiction with a population over 300,000 to establish its own IRC. And if a jurisdiction fails to do so, then it establishes a default commission, so a state-imposed default commission on that jurisdiction. The legislation includes all jurisdictions, including charter cities and counties like San Francisco. If jurisdictions want to adopt their own commission, if this legislation, of course, were to pass, there are certain requirements that that commission would have to meet that is specified in the legislation, including an independent selection process, not including incumbents, as well as some qualifying and disqualifying criteria, as well as post-service restrictions. Jurisdictions can go stricter than those, but it does establish some baselines in those areas. So again, thank you for inviting me to speak. You know, I wanted to also end with a little bit of historical context. San Francisco was the second city to establish a commission as opposed to having incumbents to draw its lines. So at the time that San Francisco did it, it was way ahead of the curve. In the almost 3 decades since then, obviously a lot of other people have also moved to the IRC model, and there's been a lot of innovation in this space and different types of best practices that have emerged. So I think it's great that you are re-examining how redistricting should go in San Francisco and looking at these other models. I wish you luck in this examination. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hydorn. I'm going to start with maybe the obvious question that's on everyone's mind, given that all of the recommendations that you talked about, San Francisco does not comply with. As if AB 1248 passes, would it require us to, I mean, we're going to take action on this anyway, but if we didn't, wouldn't that law require San Francisco to put in place all of those best practices recommendations that you talked about?
Yes, but the law will also make some default choices for you. And so some of that you may wish to have more control over, or you may wish to try and find what works best for your jurisdiction. I think perhaps maybe the most significant one is the default commission is a 14-member commission. And the way it would work is you'd first randomly select one person from each district. So in San Francisco, with 11 supervisorial districts, you'd have 11 randomly selected members. The final 3 would be selected by the initial 11. And so you'd essentially have 3 commission selected members. Now that approach of random selection by district and then self-selection of the final members has become quite standard in this model of IRC. What is maybe a little unusual is San Francisco has 11 districts, and most other jurisdictions to do IRCs have fewer. And so that means that your balance of random selection versus self-selection would be much more skewed towards the random selection model versus the self-selection model. And one thing I would just highlight with that is the commissioner self-selection model is in part designed to ensure that the commission as a whole will reflect the diversity of a whole jurisdiction. And obviously when you're doing random selection, it's random. And so you will hopefully get a random distribution that is reflective of your jurisdiction, but you may not. And commissioner self-selection is one approach to remedy that, but that does require enough commissioners for it to make a difference.
Okay, with that, I wanted to open it up to other commissioners who had questions remaining from our study of this of best practices in local redistricting. This is the man. He can answer your question.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. I'll take it from here in terms of moderating. Go ahead, Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
So much. You have to see the mic.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, find somebody else.
Okay. Vice President Giordano.
Yes, so Nicholas, it's good to see you. Nicholas and I actually know each other going years back. So Nicholas, this is Commissioner Giordano. Can't see me. Just to clarify Commissioner Dye's question, if the bill passes, San Francisco would need to comply without any changes to our charter? It like sets a minimum, or it doesn't?
As currently structured, the legislation says if you do nothing by a certain date, and that's March 1st, 2030, then a state-imposed commission will be created, and the legislation kind of defines what that would look like. But if you act earlier than that, you get more flexibility in designing how commissioners are selected, the number of commissioners. There are still certain kind of minimums that the legislation says would be required for an IRC, and that includes no direct appointment by incumbents, for example, and it also includes some of those minimum commissioner qualifications and post-service restrictions, but the overall design, number, how selected within those parameters can be done by the jurisdiction as long as you act before that date. And again, that's only if the legislation passes.
Yeah, and then my next question is, when do you think we would know as to whether the bill looks like it's going to pass? Like, what is it, this year or would it be next year?
That is a little beyond me, but I will say it's a 2-year session. Typically, bills can pass either in the first year or in the second year. Where it's passed in the first year, I think the session ends somewhere around September or October of this year. And then if it doesn't pass this year but isn't defeated, it would also be possible it can pass next year with a similar time frame.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering if, because I think the charter amendment that we're working on, we would want to complete this year, so I think we would kind of want to make it so that it would fit with the bill if it were to pass. I'm not sure how we would do that. But those are all my questions, so thank you for being here and presenting to us this evening.
Thank you, Vice President Jordanek. I'll hand it back, Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Does the legislation in its current form have many sponsors?
Yes, some of the one I'm not entirely sure everyone who's supporting it, but I do know it is supported by good government organizations and voting rights organizations, I believe, including Common Cause and League of Women Voters.
What I'm actually more, so it's in the assembly right now or the Senate? Oh, it's
In the assembly.
So
Maybe.
do you, when I ask you about the sponsors, do you have many
Oh, you mean?
assembly or sponsors?
Yeah, so it's introduced by Assemblymember Bryan, and it's the principal co-author is Senator Allen.
Okay, and do you have many people on it?
Point of clarification. So from my, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Assemblymember Bryan is the chair of the elections committee of the assembly, of the state assembly. So I imagine it's is it in committee right now?
I believe it has been, and I can double check. Yeah, it has been referred to committee.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I actually would love to ask a follow-up question, which I think maybe is part of where you were going. This is President Stone, and apologies if this is what you were already saying. But do you know beyond it being introduced by Assemblymember Bryan, how much support it has in the Assembly, and specifically given all of the components of the bill, that it would include, they're pretty specific requirements, how, just thinking about the 2-year legislative process in Sacramento and what it would require in terms of potential amendments on the floor, and then it would have to go to the Senate, state Senate. So do you have a sense of the amount of support that exists in the Assembly, and also if there's a sponsor in the state Senate, how much support there is in that legislative branch as well?
Yeah, I primarily view myself as kind of an expert on the structure of local commissions, so I'd probably prefer to mostly talk about that as opposed to speculate on the politics of it. But what I can say is one of the co-authors, Senator Allen, did introduce prior legislation prior to the redistricting cycle, which also would have required counties, I believe over 400,000, to create independent redistricting commission. That did pass the legislature, but was vetoed by Governor Newsom, and that was in 2019.
So just to give information, I think for members of the public, I think folks at the commission were also meaning to ask about the governor's level of support for this as well. But it seems as though Vice President Jordanek, you were going to say something, or?
Well, I just had an idea, and I'm not sure if Nicholas would be the one to answer this, but like it would be possible for our county to support this bill if we were, so inclined. But I mean, would that help? I mean, or is this not really your your realm.
Well, point of clarification, we as a body, if you're talking about us, we can't support anything.
No, I said the
At the
county.
state level.
They can.
No, and we
The
can.
the Board
we-
of Supervisors.
I thought that, but the elections commission cannot.
No,
You-
we can request the county to support the bill. There's a process for
I
that.
thought you were talking about, I thought you were talking about us.
Assuming we clean our own house first.
Yeah, so, Mr. Hydern, is this outside of your scope, or do you know if the bill, it would be helpful to have counties support the bill?
I'd probably prefer to keep
Okay.
my comments
Fine.
to my reports.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Parker.
Just a further clarification, sorry, we're pummeling you with all these questions that are probably a little more political in nature, but do you know, are there any appropriations associated with this bill?
So I'm looking in Info. It does say it has a appropriation no, fiscal committee yes.
Okay,
Is what legislative council is keep the bill.
okay.
My apologies, sorry to interrupt, but this was not on the agenda. So
What specifically is on the agenda?
this assembly bill,
It's part of the presentation.
and so just from the brief reading, I don't know if this would apply to San Francisco because we do have an independent redistricting commission. So this is the first I've just briefly glanced at it. So I do think that we should perhaps go back to the agenda item, which is our own redistricting measure or process that we're discussing. And, as just to briefly remind the body, if you'd like the city to take a position on any legislative action statewide or federally, you'd have to request that the mayor, because she is the head of the city, take that position, not this body. Thank you.
Thank you, DCA Flores. So I'll speak to the agenda since I drafted the agenda. I think the line of questioning is specifically asking about the state bill, just from the context of how that would maybe inform the process initiative that we're going to talk about today, which I don't think we specifically stated, but at least my line of questioning is based on what's going to be happening at the state level, how that would affect the process initiative that is on the agenda today. So just to level set on that specific piece. So let's just make sure that when we're, I guess, asking these questions, we put it in the context of why we're asking those questions. Would that work? Okay. Are you going to ask?
Yeah, thank you for that information. That's helpful. And for people who don't know why I would have asked that question is just it's a hard budget year at the state. And so I asked because it might give us some inkling to whether or not it has a chance of passing if there was an appropriation associated with it. But that's why. And for the same reason you just said, is this could have some implications, with us, perhaps. We don't know so much about the details here, but it could have implications, which is why I'm curious.
Well, my only comment is if this ends up getting passed and the governor were to sign it, it would supersede any effort that we would make here. That's why obviously there would be criteria that we might want, things that we would want to do to refine, but the momentum would come from the state.
Commissioner Dye? Oh.
So I believe Mr. Hydern had said that if you take action before the deadline, then you'd be given a lot more flexibility.
Yeah.
So
That's correct.
that's incentive for us to move on this.
Thank you for clarifying that because I missed that point.
I know that Commissioner Bernholtz had a couple of questions last time, so I'm just going to direct them to you. Last time she had some questions about enforcement for transparency provisions. For example, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Bernholtz, if you want to weigh in, I believe you had asked about enforcing prohibition on ex parte communications and things like that for commissioners. I'm wondering, do you have any comments on that?
That's a very good question. I'm not aware of any enforcement actions having been done in any IRCs around ex parte communications. I know LA had a pretty extensive requirement for documenting ex parte communications, but I'm not sure if any objections were raised or followed up on that. So sorry, I don't have a great answer on whether or not there's any models of enforcement in that regard.
And then just channeling Commissioner Bernholz once more, she had asked a little bit about were some of the recommendations, were they dependent on each other or mutually exclusive? You've already mentioned one, which is the requirement for random selection for the supervisors, the commission members who are from districts versus the size of the commission. And I had mentioned that, of course, that affects a supermajority vote as well. Can you think of any others where there's some dependencies or things that we need to think about?
Certainly, I think if you're looking at like a random selection model, what you just keyed in on are some of the most important elements. So who does the screening? How do you create the subpool? What are the requirements for the subpool? And then the random selection is done from the subpool. And do you have self-selection to perhaps adjust based on what random selection gets? Those are very dependent. In terms of other elements where choices really depend on each other, maybe I'll think of some more by the end of this conversation, but none immediately come to mind. A lot of these requirements are often additive, so building on each other. So lots of different protections for ensuring commissioner independence. There are many different ways that you can do that. Most of them are not mutually exclusive, but build on each other.
Okay. I think those are all of our questions, comments. Commissioner Dye and Commissioner Volsi, is there anything else you wanted to ask the speaker before we stop taking up his precious evening? No.
No, this is really an opportunity for everyone else. If there was anything else, he's our last expert witness here.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And again, apologies that it was so much later than anticipated. We really appreciate you staying up and answering our questions.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much, and great luck with your process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I know that we also should talk through the initiative plan. So no, we can go straight to, we can go straight to commission discussion, and then before the item closes, we'll go to public comment. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. Is that okay? Okay, sorry, I couldn't see you, so I wasn't. Yeah, okay, cool. So Commissioners Lavolsi and Dye, did you want to say anything specifically about the document before we go into any discussion?
Yeah, just a couple of highlights. As I mentioned, the new material basically starts on page 4. The rest of it is historical. And this timeline, I consulted with Board of Supervisors President Aaron Peskin. I also consulted with City Attorney David Chu on this timeline, and that's how we put this together. We are recommending targeting the March 2024 primary as opposed to the actual presidential election because there's a concern, and we've discussed it in this body before, that there might be a zillion propositions in the presidential one trying to hit the very high turnout election, even though the primaries expect to be a high turnout election as well. And so for it not to get lost, that it would be better to shoot for March. And that also gives us an option if we think it doesn't look favorable, even though, as Nicholas pointed out, all of these have seen great popularity among voters, that they almost always pass. But if we run out of time or we're not happy with the draft and still need to work out kinks out, at least there's a second opportunity to go in front of the voters in November. So the timeline is the most important thing. It gives us, some, not a lot, but enough time, we believe, to do adequate outreach and at least a couple of public input hearings to hear from the public what they think about these different aspects of best practices and recommendations. And then it gives the commission a couple of meetings to discuss and deliberate and decide what we think the best package ought to look like for San Francisco. And then it would give the city attorney's office enough time to draft the actual legislation. They would be working with a legislative champion or champions from the Board of Supervisors. There are a number of supervisors who may be interested in carrying this for us, depending on what it looks like at the end. And so when we know what it looks like after the public input, we will, find out who our champion will be, and they will be the sponsor to work with the city attorney's office to actually draft the final language. It has to be introduced at the Board of Supervisors by September. And then they will go through their process. And hopefully, we get a majority of the Board of Supervisors to refer it to the ballot, hopefully much more than a majority. And as indicated later on, we're actually recommending going through that route as opposed to asking the mayor or forcing community organizations to run a signature gathering campaign. So we think this is the best way to get broad support and engagement at the least amount of cost and effort. So we put in here a bunch of questions to kind of guide the public input. So items that you will recognize were in the kind of questions, comments column on the summary before, that I think we could use some guidance from the public on what they think. There may be more, but, we certainly welcome additional input. We're actually recommending that we form a temporary committee to kind of, run the public input hearings and kind of hash out, what we would like the full commission to consider as a group, just to do a lot of the heavy lifting, because it's kind of a tight time frame to stay on this schedule. So there are, I think, a couple of motions that we'll need. One is to approve this plan. And one is to form a committee to actually do the public input. I think that's all that we need in terms of motions. Any questions?
Before that, I just wanted to make sure, Commissioner Volsi, did you want to add anything? Because I know this was a collaborative effort. Got it?
She's got it all.
Okay. Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
So I do have, because seeing this all at once kind of, I have a lot of questions. So you spoke with Supervisor Peskin, and he is, number one, I guess, is it within DCA, is it within our jurisdiction to do this kind of work, I guess? Because I would think we're not resourced for this. So like, we're going to hire a secretary. Is she going to have to go to all these meetings? Because, I mean, this is a valid question. I can tell you right now, I'm on BOPEC, and that's all I can handle.
We're not asking you.
No, but this is a lot, you're right, it's a lot of heavy lifting. So I would want to, like, my first response to this was what I've kind of been saying all along, which is this needs to go through the Board of Supervisors. So I'm glad that you've had the conversation with Peskin. I and they're resourced for hearings and they're resourced for all the kinds of things that we're talking about doing here at this commission level. I don't know that there's precedence. Maybe Vice President Jordanek can speak to that for us shepherding something like this. I mean, it just seems to me like this, like we should be finding our Board of Supervisors champion now, and that's where it needs to go. And I know we don't want it to die, like does it go there and then die? But that's where the neighborhood groups come in and put the pressure on. Because I don't know that we, number one, that we are, that, I mean, like, is this outside our scope of work? Number one, and number two, for it to have the best, I just think I think it belongs at the Board of Supervisors. And so I would like DCA to weigh in and let us know if this is, if following this plan is within our purview, number one, and number two, what did Peskin say about this? Is this what he told you to do? And what did David Chu say?
Let's let DCA Flores respond first.
I don't know what Peskin said about this, so I'm just I wasn't at that meeting. So this is election related, adjacent. So if this is the course that the commission wanted to take, you could take it in exploring what you could do. But the commission cannot itself put a ballot measure on the ballot. And our office would assist in drafting, keyword assist, not write the redistricting plan. It's a collaborative effort, so whenever we get a request to draft something, we work with the requester to get as much information about what they'd like in this legislation, but we don't come up with the plan for you, especially if you have specific things that you want on the plan. So as soon as this commission has identified a sponsor, we can discuss what our office can do for this process.
Thank you. Commissioner Dye, just quickly, would you mind answering Commissioner Hayden Crowley's question and then allowing other folks to also give their feedback before going into? Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so just to answer your question, what President Peskin said he expects from us is a set of conceptual recommendations. He does not expect us to draft it. He said that's their job, but he wants to hear what the commission recommends. And then they will take it on, whoever the champion is, and that's why he said we need it by this date, and you need to give the city attorney's office time to work with us to draft something, and then we need to introduce it by September. And your boss, City Attorney David Chu, I just gave him a heads up about the timeline and was it right? And he said yes, and he said, thanks for letting us know it's coming.
Yes, so just to clarify again, we do not help draft until a sponsor has been identified.
Right.
Not before.
Right.
A sponsor has been identified and requests that we help them draft this.
Right.
Thank you.
The request will come from the board.
Did you want to jump in? Did you have a point?
If you want to, I don't know if there's more to talk about related to capacity questions, but if we're moving to different questions, then I have a different question.
You can say whatever you would
I
like.
can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I just wondered if there was more to talk about related to some of what you posed, Commissioner Hayden Crowley. In general, I generally support this. I think that it looks good to me. I can appreciate, questions about capacity holding hearings and things like this, but I think that the list of, where did it go? Who to reach out to and all of that. If there's good partnership with folks on the Board of Supervisors and other organizations who we're in touch with, I mean, what we wouldn't want to be accused of is that people don't know about the hearings. And so that's super important to do in the whole trust and transparency thing. But I think you have a pretty good list of how to get that out there, and it certainly would be a heavy lift. But in general, I think that it's I support a lot of what you have here. And one thing I just wanted to clarify, because I recall from our last conversation about these hearings, there was a suggestion of having community groups bring forward full proposals at a hearing. And what I'm seeing, and if this is what I'm interpreting, then I'm glad, because I think this is good, is that I'm understanding this proposal to mean that the hearing would just allow members to speak on individual pieces of that they've heard at the different meetings that that you all have held, like before I joined and all of that, and that they don't have to come with a full proposal, that it's just speaking to little pieces that resonate with them, that they care about, related to this list of questions. So I'm seeing
Yeah.
I'm seeing you nod, and I'll just add one more thing, and then I'll stop. So that's the clarification that I had, and then within that list of topics to bring forward to the public, I wondered under operations and decision making if you wanted something also more explicit about ways the public might participate in a redistricting process, because I see them mentioned, the timeline, the draft map deadline, in order to enable adequate time for meaningful public input and collaboration. I see that. And there are a few things that kind of refer to it, but I wondered if we wanted anything more explicitly calling out how might the public be involved in the process. It's just a prompt for people to think about when they're coming to give comment. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Parker. I also would like to share some thoughts. I wasn't sure if other folks had things they wanted to add. Did you have something, Vice President Jordanek?
Well, I did want to say something as part of this conversation, but I wasn't sure if it's on this document or not. So I don't know if I should hold it off until afterwards, or.
Is it about this agenda item?
Yeah, it's about the agenda. It's just not on the document. So it's kind of in response to Mr. Heidern's presentation, but he mentioned the state bills, and I was wondering if, between Commissioner Dye and Commissioner Lavolsi, maybe take a look at the state bills and see, for example, if one of these bills or all of them were to do 80% of the types of things we're thinking about, then it would be good to know that. And maybe if, part of our legislative plan can be going through the county's process to see if we can ask our county to support one or all of these bills. I've been through that process at least once, and there's something called the State Legislative Committee that's combined of, I think, 7 different people from parts of the city government. One of the seats is the mayor and so on. But we could go through that process to, support one of these state bills. And would that fit in, or?
Probably after we get our own house in order, like I said. I think that, we want to be one of those counties that fixes it before the deadline in this proposed legislation, so that we have the flexibility to do something that we think fits San Francisco uniquely. That would be the pitch also to supervisors, that we want to be in control of our own train as opposed to having the state impose it on us.
Point of order. I just want to make sure we're letting people finish, if you don't mind. I know I don't mean to be a stickler, but I just want to make sure we're everyone is having a chance to share what they wanted. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a stickler. I just, in the interest of time, because we could go back and forth on every single point, but I think everyone has to have a chance to share their thoughts. So Vice President Jordanek, did you have more that you also wanted to add?
No, just to see if they would have time to take a look at the bills.
Okay. Sorry, again, I don't mean to be a stickler. Was your hand up, Commissioner Lavolsi? Okay. Commissioner Dye, was there more you wanted to say before I then pass it over to someone else who's spoken?
I do want to know, would the new secretary, would you be relying on the new secretary, and would that be part of her, is she full-time? I mean, how's that work?
She's not full-time.
Yeah. So how, and then some of your marketing plan, how does that all work?
So we are hoping to leverage the department's resources on that, because they're already doing all this outreach anyway. They already have a database of all these So the committee would, draft the information, but we're really asking the department to send it out.
Oh, sorry. I'm Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Have you,
I'll just, if you guys want to.
have you had the conversation with Director Arntz about leveraging the department's resources?
We will.
Okay.
So, sorry. Commissioner Dye, was there more you were going to, or Commissioner Wilson? Okay. Commissioner Bernholz, you have not had the opportunity to participate. Is there anything you wanted to contribute? And not to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I'm following it all, and it's all good.
Okay. So I would like to share my thoughts. So I have several, but in the interest of time, I'll try and be kind of brief. I strongly agree with Commissioner or Vice President Jordanek about looking at the state bills. And one of the things that actually, let me take a step back. I really appreciate a couple of things. One, the work that was put into this, and two, the passion and conviction with which there is a belief that we should work on this, and the commitment that we have provided to this topic, to this issue that is so important to the city and to the members of the public. So thank you for that. I should have said that up front. I strongly do agree with Vice President Jordanek about looking at the state bills. And one of the challenges I had, or questions I had, was about, I know Commissioner Dye, you said we want to get our house in order first. I think that's something we should talk about if that is what we want, and if that is what we all feel, because it is an enormous undertaking to do all of this. And, if we're going to form a committee or vote on forming a committee, if we're going to put that as a priority on the secretary, on the department, would we be potentially duplicating efforts that, yes, while the benefits of flexibility might be there, like, let's talk about that. Let's weigh if that's even something we believe. And then my second point is kind of tied to that, which is I am gravely concerned about the timeline. I went through this, and it's not to say that I don't deeply value the passion with which we should get this done, but one of the big things we heard from the League of Women Voters in the last meeting, is how much time matters for community input. And in fact, I specifically recall that Lauren Gerardin, the person who spoke from the League of Women Voters, said that one of the things that the redistricting task force failed on this year was not giving community time, the time to either do the outreach or even for the task force to do the outreach, but also time for them to respond. And I think I actually I went back to my notes, and there were a couple things that she had said that I just want to elevate. That community groups have different meeting cadences. Sometimes they meet monthly, sometimes they meet every other month, especially when trying to coordinate between those groups. Also, especially in an organization like the League of Women Voters, when mostly it's volunteers, it can take even longer. When it comes to newsletters with the Board of Supervisors, there's a very specific schedule, and you would maybe miss 1 month. And so, just looking at this schedule, like really detailed, I see it as incredibly ambitious to try and have public hearings next month, at the end of next month, based on even just hearing that from the main stakeholder from the League of Women Voters. And the only reason that I see that this timeline is so expedited from what I read, and I'm sure that you have more thoughts, is that going on the November ballot risks voter fatigue. And I don't personally, and I'm one member, obviously everyone has different thoughts, but I don't necessarily believe that that's more important than giving time to community participation. The other thing I will add is, when I went through the timeline in the process, there were a bunch of steps I felt maybe need to be included, and I'm happy to draft or not need to be, but I would recommend are included. So I got, actually, I think Commissioner Parker raised this, I got very confused actually between what the goals of those public hearings were. So, you know, walking through the request for community output, you know, what is that outreach period? What's the structure of the input that they provide? How are we going to maintain those records? How are we going to review them before the public hearings and make sure they're accessible to the public? And then after that review period ends, like giving time for the commission or the advisory committee to review it. And then what is the forum of the public hearings? Is it, you know, what's the format? What is the main goal? Is it to discuss what has been provided by members of the public, whether it's the full plans or just specific pieces of feedback? And then we discuss it and ask for input. And then after that, you know, once we get the public hearing, I see that there's another step of, okay, we had this public hearing, let's ingest the feedback that we had from the public, let's discuss it as a commission, and someone would then have to draft that proposal. And then there are all these steps around the amendment process that incorporates working with the city attorney's office. And I believe, and this is another point that I'll come to in a moment, you know, working with the sponsors to do that, including also the mayor's office. And so, you know, that step alone, I think, has multiple steps. And I do see that there were 2 months included for that. But then also the process of the ballot measure. So and I'm happy to share this. I hand wrote it just because that's how I tend to process things, but I can put this into a document if it's helpful. But I think what I am trying to say is I think that there are a lot of steps that I'm worried that with this like very ambitious deadline, we wouldn't be able to hit, and then we risk not having the necessary community input that people have been asking us to provide. And the other thing I'll say is I had one like very specific thing that I think is important from the beginning, which is I think we need to figure out who that sponsor is now. And I'd be curious, Commissioner Dye, I'd love to hear the conversation with Peskin specifically, because, you know, I'm curious as to why, if he was supportive of the timeline, why he didn't say he would sponsor it. So he did say he would sponsor it. So you already have a sponsor.
He suggested others too.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. So I think the fact that we have a sponsor is definitely something that's important. I'm glad to hear that. And it sounds like you already have a partnership. I think being able to have that partnership has to be like embedded in every single one of those steps. So I'm really, really glad to hear that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is when I was looking at the tactics, I had a very similar question, and I don't remember who raised this, but I had very similar thoughts. I mean, when I looked at that, I thought it was a marketing plan, right? Like this is a cohesive marketing plan, like a landing page on the website, I just made a list off the top of my head of the deliverables, you know, a form for the feedback for public feedback, advice, or, you know, et cetera, tool to store all of that feedback, to collect it, to store it, and then be able to distribute it or disseminate it to on that landing page, a press release, compiling an email list, developing the content for the email, developing social content, developing an outreach plan to media groups, personal invitations to neighborhood groups, to good government groups, working with supervisors. I mean, this is like a significant, and the reason I say all this is in my past life, I was a marketer and this was my full-time job. So I understand the desire to have an advisory committee, but everyone has, like, we're still a volunteer body. So who's going to do all of this work? And I don't know if I would support asking the department to do that for us. So I don't want to be a stickler, but I also think that you have done so much work and this is so important, and I would hate to not do it without the best that we can put into it. So I apologize. I know I've been talking for quite a while, but I did put a lot of thought into the work that you had already developed, because I felt it was deserving of that. So With that, I will shut up. I would be happy to hand that over if you want to respond to some or not all, or we can also table it till the next time, whatever you would prefer, but yeah.
So I think the main thing is we would like, general agreement on this direction. We basically have built in the possibility that we may need to go for November instead, which would just give us more time to do everything. So what I'm showing here is the fast timeline in case we can try to hit March for the reasons that I talked about. But it's possible we won't, because if we get feedback that we need to do more community outreach and we need to, have more hearings, then it means we won't make March, right? So basically what we're showing is, this is what it would look like if we tried to shoot for March, understanding that if we miss, at least we have the ability to shoot for November. I mean, November is going to be an even higher turnout election. So the only concern about that is, in general, for these kinds of measures, higher turnout is better because people tend to vote for it. But yeah, there's the balancing issue of they will have, 25 other propositions to look at as well.
Yeah. Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
I would just see that the very last paragraph to me was the most important paragraph of the entire document, because it is the political strategy. And that's the most important thing that you do, which is getting the sponsors and what are they going to do and so forth. And, if it goes on the ballot, you do need a strategy around like who's going to run the campaign. Who are these neighborhood groups going to raise money for it? Who are you going to be your you kind of have to have a political advisor right off the bat. That costs money. And so it's all doable, and I hope you do it. It's like I'm doing this for a client right now. It's going to take me a year. and it is. It's going to take me a year. So I'm looking at it like thinking, oh my gosh, this is so much. And that's my skepticism, because I think it's a great plan. But I also think that you need to flesh out the political strategy in much more detail, incorporate Robin's suggestions as well, and thank you for them. You've done a remarkable, amazing job in a short period of time and given an incredible amount of thought. But I do think having the sponsors on board, that's like the most important thing, because it's got to run through the Board of Supervisors. And like, if there's going to be somebody that's going to carry it, I guess from a strategic point of view, you may probably, Supervisor Peskin's President Peskin's probably not going to run for another office. So I guess I'm just being like out there, but you probably want someone who could get something out of this. That will bring some people to the table that will pay for this
We had
campaign.
that discussion, but there's also someone who has the capacity and the passion behind it as well.
Right,
So he did suggest other names, but he said he would do it.
He said he has the passion and the capacity for it.
He considers himself a good government guy.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Good. I just, and he can bring in money, because you're going to need money for this, and your neighborhood groups are going to need to, that's a whole other piece of it. But I would not, I guess my point is that the marketing to get the community group input, so important. Robin's got that, is added so much to what you've already done, which is fleshed out, which is just so much work. But the whole political strategy, that is an entire other piece. And that involves consultants and in a campaign and all of that. And like, where's that coming from, I guess?
That's going to come from our sponsor, because like I said, we are basically recommending a set of reforms based on what we've learned through this educational process and based on the community input that have helped refine it. And we are going to hand it to our legislative champion or champions, and they're going to take it from there.
Okay.
So
Sorry, did someone have a hand up over here? This is President Stone. I was just thinking, based on what you were just saying, Commissioner Dye, what if, and I know this might seem radical, but what if, we focused what if our focus, rather than, our volunteer body doing all of this work, what if we presented the robust plan to a sponsor and say, here's the path, and we will support and help throughout the process. Maybe we identify the right committee of the supervisors, a sponsor who's on that committee who has so many more resources than we do, and we just deliver the plan. We deliver the plan, the reasons why it's important. Here's what needs to be done, and so there's pretty much very little that they would have to do in terms of architecting what that would look like. It's a recommendation from the Elections Commission to the Board of Supervisors. We can identify, you could identify a committee that you think it makes sense, but then, we're not doing this like enormous, I think this would require a lot of resources. I think we've talked about that I'm not certain we all have the capacity or bandwidth to do. So what if we adjusted to have it be, our focus be delivering a plan and helping to shepherd the execution or implementation of said plan with a sponsor and a committee, like a subcommittee or committee, not
It's a
subcommittee.
committee. It's got to go to
Yeah.
committee first.
Commission.
I think that
Vice
really
President.
is what we're planning to do. And if you notice, we only suggested, a couple of, and we put some dates down, a couple of public input hearings, mostly to refine, what we might recommend. Because again, we're just providing conceptual, we're not drafting anything. We're providing conceptual high-level recommendations like no political appointments, for example. And again, a lot of this stuff has already been laid out as best practices in the reports. Even in 2017, if you look at, there were 25 best practices recommendations, of which San Francisco only abides by like a couple of them. Yeah, the first one, right? We have an independent commission and then we have nothing else.
Do it by population.
Right. So a lot of it has actually been, we just need to, as a group, agree that we agree with these best practices, and get some feedback from community organizations on what might be some tweaks that are important for San Francisco. So that we deliberately only proposed a couple of community input sessions to again, come up with a set of recommendations of best practices that we as an Elections Commission endorse.
So I'd like to respond to that. This is President Stone, because you were responding to my direct comment, and then also I have cut off Vice President Dradonic, so I'll hand it over to him. I'm just going to be very honest. I feel as though that was a twist of what I said, because I don't agree. I don't believe that we have agreed to these recommendations. And I personally will not support them unless or until we have people from San Francisco participating in the process. And what I'm saying is, even having the hearings that you say, we're just going to have these public hearings, in my mind, that's actually making something quite large seem very small. And you have it even in this process that you want to do an outreach plan. So it's either big or it's small, but we can't have it both ways. And I think what I'm trying to say is, rather than us doing all of this to get these communities participating, to make sure that there's space and transparency with people who are held accountable as elected officials by their constituents, have them lead the charge, have them deliver them the recommendation of the plan, not the recommendation of how to reform redistricting. It's, we've heard all these things. This is what we recommend the committee of the Board of Supervisors would do to have a good process for getting this on as a charter amendment. I want to be very clear, because I feel as though that got changed in after I said it, and that is not what I meant. I am not comfortable saying that this is what I recommend, because I haven't heard from community groups. Community groups haven't had a chance to participate. They even told us in the last meeting explicitly that they want more time, like repeatedly said that we want more and more time. And so I am not going to agree to going against that. So I want to be very clear about that. Vice President Jordanek, I apologize, I cut you off.
That's no problem. Yes, so one of the things, I mean, I support the idea of a charter amendment, and, you know, kind of the general ideas. I mean, one of my concerns is it's not clear to me from the document how much of the tasks are going to fall on the full commission versus like the individuals that are leading it. Because, I mean, one of my concerns is we do have a lot of other things that we want to work on this year. Like one of them is, you know, the racial equity initiatives. There's stuff around the different department goals that we might want to set for the department, you know, having discussions about those, about, let's see. Oh, and then like the director evaluation process, that's something that took like a year for us in the past. And then, or about like, you know, open source voting is a topic that we haven't had on the agenda for a while. So I would kind of like to have assurance that with whatever path we go forward, we do have like time and energy left over to work on those things too. So we don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, just one more thing just to follow up. And in the past, when open source voting was something that I personally was spending a lot of time on, one tactic that we did it as a commission was we authorized like me and another individual to kind of like do outreach on behalf of the commission outside the context of meetings. So it wasn't involving the full commission's time, but they had the force of the commission when they're out in the community. I was speaking before groups and with members of the Board of Supervisors. So that's a way to kind of get the best of both worlds of having the commission behind you, but you're free to like do a lot in what time you have.
So,
Commissioner.
Commissioner Hagen-Crowley, so there's precedence, in other words, is what you answered my question from earlier, which was, have we ever done anything like this where we're out there in the community? And what you're saying, Vice President Jordanek, is we have. Okay, well, that is reassuring because I'm questioning about the scope of work in terms of our bylaws and everything else, if this falls within it. But I guess too, when you are talking about hearing more from the community, that is what the Board of Supervisors does. They have committee hearings and so a lot of these people that would maybe come and talk to you are going to have to come again and talk to the Board of Supervisors because they're not going to take your word for it. They're going to have those hearings. So I just wonder, are we building redundancy into the process? To President Stone's point is they have the resources. They're resourced for it. I just think the political strategy comes first. And also, here's another thing that I just get concerned about is we get promises from people that they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And you go out there and do this work and then September comes and, oh, you know, something else came up. They just, you know, and also they're off all of August, by the way, you know, and then they come back and there's something else. But we really need to see how committed they are. I mean, we really need to have somebody that wants to take this and run with it. And I think we need to do that first. I think that has to be the number one priority, to do that first, because you want it to be successful. And I would hate to see you be out there and oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you know.
Yeah,
I got to
Commissioner Commissioner Lavalsi hasn't had the chance to participate, so.
I really appreciate your feedback because I think that is, Commissioner Hayden-Crowley, a really important point because things do come up and people say they'll do things and then when it comes to the date, things change. So I think your feedback is well taken and something that Commissioner Dye and I have to really think about.
Commissioner Dye, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, the reason they need 6 months is because they will be doing these committee hearings and presumably public input as well. the reason we built in some public input for us is to help us as a group refine what we would want to recommend to the Board of Supervisors. Because again, we're just recommending broad conceptual changes. For example, one of the questions I have in there is like, who should be the trusted entity that does the vetting and, supervises the random selection process? I don't know that we know, and it would be good to hear from, some suggestions from members of the public to help us think about that. And so the intention of these public hearings, and the reason we're not having a ton of them, is because we expect the Board of Supervisors to have those. What we're trying to do is refine to help us as a body figure out what we want to recommend to our champion so that they can carry it and take it, to the finish line. So that's why we built in the community, because like I said, I think we could debate some of the stuff, but I think on some of these items, we really don't know, and there may be a range of answers that are acceptable.
Was there more? Oh,
No, that's.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Just to that point, they'll be doing it again at the supervise. I mean, we can make those recommendations, but to Robin's point, President Stone's point, it's a process.
Yeah.
We're recommending that you do this. There's also obviously a template at the state level that you could just, like, what he said, 80%.
I have pointed that out.
80% that you could just like say,
I'm like,
okay.
this is not a lot of drafting because people have done it before.
I think, I think you got to see who's going to do it, who's really going to do it. And can they, because somebody who, well, I don't want to say anymore.
So, I mean, obviously we can have another conversation with Supervisor Peskin and others. Like I said, he had suggested some other names. I had envisioned that, again, that we as a body could endorse a package of, these are the best practices that we recommend that you incorporate. It has the endorsement of the Elections Commission, and then they're going to work on whatever, they're going to work on, and they're going to have their own hearings, and people will react to very specific things that will be drafted at that point, not just some high level thing about no political appointments, right? So the thinking was that we have a couple of public input hearings just to refine our own thinking so that we can put forward this package, and that we will identify the legislative sponsor as we're doing it. Because it's actually, we're talking, end of next month, right? So that's enough time to get the word out and say, hey, here are some of the questions we're answering. And if anything, it will be the precursor to involve people at the time the Board of Supervisors is ready to do full committee hearings. So it was never intended to be the only, public input hearings.
Commissioner Parker.
A few things. Let's see, which one should I do first? With the timing, I recall at the last one, I also had expressed some concern around timing. And what I also recall is that the feedback we were hearing from the community at that time was around proposing an entire plan ready, not just weighing in on specific pieces of it. I do think it's super, super important for us to do. So I agree with that. And if it does make sense for us to hear from the community to come up with some recommendations. I'm just wondering if we didn't do any hearings as a commission, then what would we hand as a starting off point to the sponsor? They might feel a little bit, there's some direction they would probably appreciate, because this is part of why we decided to own this here, right? As opposed to saying Board of Supervisors should do it. They've got a lot on their plate. So it seems to me, when I'm thinking of relationships that I've had with electeds in the past, that they appreciate some direction. And so we have to have some way to come up with that direction. And whether that is we all just say, actually, we're just going to hand you this fair maps, Promise Fair Maps report, here go, but they're going to say it's 80 pages long. Like, can you just give me the summary, right? So I think that they will want some kind of direction from us. And then they should take it from there. In an ideal world, like the best chance of this thing passing is if you can get, if you get Supervisor Peskin, President Peskin, you know, he's the president of the board. And if you get a wide range of kind of political representation on the board and they are the co-sponsors.
Right.
And then when they bring it forward, you get the sign on of all of the, you know, the rest of them who are not in there. So you have 11 supervisors sponsoring this. So when it goes on the ballot, it will say entire board,
Yep.
supported by League of Women Voters. And then there's very little money you actually have to raise, because every time we have a measure like that on the ballot, it passes because there is the mayor, the board. So the work is the political work, but that is the range you want. If you see that on your ballot guide, it's done. Everybody will be like, oh, they all agree? Okay, fine. Like that's it. Like you just don't have to spend a lot of money like building a whole other campaign. So that definitely deserves work. And if it does happen though, where people will say, I have other priorities, I can't put a whole bunch of effort into this, but if we can help build the coalition so that there is an entire board behind this, then it's going to be harder for them to say, I'm not going to put it on now, because they're like, oh, this is easy. Everybody agrees, let's have a win. They want to win too. They like having everybody support something. And so that feels important. So to sum up, I think we do want to give some guidance to the board before the sponsor takes it. And so I think it is good for us, and maybe this is too rushed of a timeline and we need to just aim for November. That might be realistic. But I do think we need a couple of opportunities for the public to just focus on this, give us some reactions to things they've heard, put a few links out for them to review so that we can say, here's some guidelines, you know, just a few, just to give some recommendations to get them started, because it'll be too overwhelming. If we give them the whole 80 pages and plus, it won't go anywhere. That's my opinion. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Parker. I just wanted to add, this is President Stone, I did not intend to say that I don't want to do this. I more just have expressed significant concerns about doing it in the short amount of time with the resources that we have. So I just want to clarify, because I think I obviously have strong opinions always. And I don't want that message to get lost in all of the other things I said. I genuinely believe that there are things that we can do. And I agree with Commissioner Parker totally, being able to hand them something. And I don't disagree that public hearings could be the way. It's just thinking about the fact that we're a volunteer body. We would be taking away time or we'd be allocating a lot of time to this. We have other priorities in addition to thinking about our website and thinking about processes and, you know, preparing for the election next year. I mean, there are lots and lots of things. And so thinking about all of that, and also, yes, the secretary, I mean, I personally, and ultimately, like as president, like the secretary is, I'm accountable, right? And I don't personally think it would be responsible for me to say to this new person coming in, who we have so many things as a commission that we need support from a secretary on. I think we can all agree onboarding was a challenge. So there are many things that we need need help. Organizing things that are in our bylaws that we haven't done. There's so many things, and this person is part-time. So I'm just, you know, as I'm thinking about, okay, we're putting links on the website, we're creating forms, who's going to do that? And so it's not that I'm a naysayer. I genuinely believe, I mean, I'm a huge supporter of trying to do this. It's just a matter of how, and how long, and also following the guidance that we were given directly from the League of Women Voters. And perhaps before we go further on this plan, but if we don't make a vote today, maybe you could reach out to Lauren Girardin and some of the groups who are working on this, because I remember she specifically said she's leading from her side, and ask, does this timeline work for you? Do you think that this is enough time? And so I think it's great. I'm really glad to hear that you already have a sponsor. But I think I'm concerned about this body having the time, and the bandwidth in such a short amount of time. And there was one other thing I was going to mention, something we can hand them. well, anyways, I rest my case. Commissioner Hayden
You're
Crowley,
acting like an old person, like.
an old soul.
Now, again, I think I've lost my train of thought. But actually, what I would say is that we do have a lot of other things. And I, looked at this and was overwhelmed, but I'm easily overwhelmed. I would say that when we talk about DEI, which is not something I'm even going to pretend that I'm good at, I think this is part of DEI.
Definitely.
And so when we talk about, so I got it right. See, so I do think like if you achieve this, this would be a major accomplishment for
Absolutely.
achieving, for supporting DEI. And like this could go into our plan. So I do think that. But, and I think that what everybody has said is, I just want to say, is very helpful. So even though like I may say something, but when I hear your feedback, like you change my mind, I mean, instantly. And I'm, oh, I agree with that person. Oh, so it's very, very helpful. I just want to say each and every single one of you, and thank you for your input. And then I was going to say something else. Oh, I do want to just be like a broken record once again and say that those sponsor things, like after this, that's what you have to do, because we got to know that they're in place, that they're on board, and that they want to hear from you, and you can do your public hearings, and that you're going to come back. And to Robin's point, talk to those other folks in the community. But again, I just want to thank everybody for their input. I really like having my mind changed. But then I'm always worried that you're going to think I'm crazy because I changed my mind again. But anyway, thank you.
So,
Commissioner Dye.
yeah, President Stone, I wonder if we can take some public input and,
On the plan, you mean? Sorry,
yeah,
point
on
of
the
clarification.
plan.
On the plan, yeah.
Again, I just want to telegraph, I kind of want approval in this direction. Like I said, the plan accounts for the fact that we might have to hit November. I just presented the most accelerated, timeline, if we want to try to hit March. But yeah, I'd love to get some public input on this, and on the dates that we proposed, and noting that these are just dates that Commissioner Levolsi and I said that we could make. And if we actually form a committee, which is what we recommend, so it is not a burden on the full commission, so that, we're able to, make some decisions in a smaller group, and, work with legislative sponsors, et cetera, then we'll be kind of empowered to move forward by the full commission to kind of push this forward a bit.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
One more point of information. I do believe that if you would access the secretary, that individual would be eligible for overtime.
But that also depends on if they're able to give that time.
Yeah, right.
Put
it out.
People have, yeah, for sure. I mean, I could definitely look into that, but I'm
don't know
not
what the circumstances
comfortable saying, sorry, this is President Stone. Commissioner Hayden Crowley, was there more you were going to say?
No,
Okay.
I just am putting it out there as a possibility for negotiation. Because I know the whole thing is so overwhelming, and it was the first question I asked, because the resources are a real issue. But if that's an option to offer potentially, if that individual that we were able to bring on has the time.
So this is President Stone. I think before I could agree to, or I could vote in favor of this plan at this point, I would want to understand what the expectations are of the commission secretary and also the expectations of the advisory committee. I know I can't join that committee in terms of my timing. And so, I think actually, Vice President Jordanek, I think that's actually it was a helpful suggestion to say, what if we just give the two of you, we authorize you to do what you need to do. I don't know if we need to form another committee. I mean, I can be convinced, of course, but I definitely want to know what the expectation of the secretary would be. And, yeah, I think maybe in the, in the next, whatever, if you want to share with us, like, maybe there's a RACI document, so responsibility, like thinking about who's accountable for what. But, you know, as someone who's managing the secretary, I definitely, you know, I'm just going to be upfront for her sake or their sake or his sake that, you know, there isn't going to be a free for all. Like that there have to be very clear boundaries and parameters because she works for the, you know, the whole commission, or they work for the whole commission. And after reading through all of this and also the expectations on the department, I don't, first of all, I don't think that we're allowed to do that. Ask them to do things for us. We can't direct them to do things. And second of all, I don't think that, yeah, I'll just leave it there. I don't think that I think we have to be considerate of who's going to do what, but I also don't think we need a committee to do that. I respect and trust the work that you two have already done. I don't think it necessarily needs a third person. But again, I could be convinced. Commissioner Dye?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thinking of having a committee was just to add another commissioner when we do public input hearings, rather than just having the two of us.
Oh, point of clarification. So you're saying the public hearings would not be, we would not hear them as a full body. It would just
That's
be.
why I was recommending a committee. Because if you notice, we suggested a couple of dates there already.
Yeah.
And
I saw
again,
those.
that was based on Commissioner LaVolsi and my availability.
Got
So,
it. Okay.
and when we put this plan together, you know, we had no idea where the secretary search was going to be. So we didn't have any expectation of that. But, you know, if there is a secretary, sure, we could use some help, but, you know.
But it has to be, sorry, President Stone, point of information. It can't be like, well, we could use their help. Like I'm literally saying I would need to know what the expectation is.
Yeah,
because
we talked to you about it.
Okay.
Like I said, we didn't have any expectations since we don't have a secretary right now.
Vice President Jordan.
Yeah, actually, this is kind of related, but would either of you be open to handling like the website tasks for these hearings and like posting, you know, documents from the public and stuff if the secretary doesn't have time?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want your help to put the first page up.
Yeah.
So in the interest of time, I just wanted to share one quick thing because we're already at 10:11. I will be postponing the next agenda item until the next meeting. So that will be an open agenda item and we will talk about it in April after we're done with this agenda item. So I just wanted to make a quick announcement that everyone knows because I obviously am a proponent to not staying late. So I'm going to practice what I preach here. Commissioners Dye and LaVolsi, is there a specific action that you, like, what is the final kind of takeaway that you want to have, understanding, you know, we have talked about this for more than an hour?
So my original thought was to just get a motion to, you know, agree on this general direction so that we're kind of authorized to move forward on this and take action. Our thinking was to have a committee, so again, that the committee could hold the public hearings just so that we have another commissioner available, you know, another pair of ears for that. If you don't think that's necessary, it sounds like there's been precedent before where we've just been authorized as a task force or something, or continue to work informally the way we have been.
Well,
It's a little different, but
I'd like to say something.
Commissioner LaVolsi, sorry.
Yeah, I would like for us to take some time to absorb the feedback that we've gotten and then really think about how we're going to deliver this, what our capacity is, you and I. And, you know, I don't know if it's possible, but could that be something that we could deliver to you or how could we do that before the next meeting?
I guess from a Brown Act perspective, I probably can't.
Or one of us to live, one of
Yeah,
us to live.
but if you had worked on it, it would be a serial.
Yeah.
We could, I mean, we could have we could consider a brief special meeting if that's with you. I think, let me think on that.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to ask for a special meeting. I know, excuse me, Commissioner Lavelle sees everyone's time is limited.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is perhaps we need to, Commissioner and I, take this feedback and think about it and come up with a plan that has incorporated this feedback.
But I'm so sorry. Vice President Jordanic, I know he had his hand up.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to clarify what I said earlier about, I said the commission had delegated me and another person to like work on an issue. I think at that time it was more after the commission had passed a policy, then we had then delegated two people to kind of, they had their marching orders, go work with the board to implement this.
Oh.
So this might not quite be the same because here we don't know what the marching orders are yet. So, but also I just had a question for, this may be for you, DCA Flores. Like, I know there's a distinction between, like, there's a different kind of a meeting where it doesn't need the same noticing requirements. If it's, you can have like a gathering where maybe you have an event where the public shows up, provide feedback on something, but it's not considered a meeting that complies with the Brown Act, or is that?
I think if a commissioner wanted to meet with a community group, they could.
But could two members do that, or?
I think that would, I'm looking at your committees and I think,
Just can't do more than two, right?
no,
If it's
3 members, so, yeah, I guess 2 people wouldn't be a committee, but you wouldn't be able to post it, like, you wouldn't be able to say elections commission meeting or elections commission committee.
It would just be two.
It would just be like you on your own random time, like,
But I mean,
you want to go
could it be
to.
like announced on the commission website saying there's this public
No.
hearing? Okay.
Commissioner Dye,
You could go on your own though and like hold these community meetings if you wanted to.
I mean, what I think we want is, authority to work on identifying, the sponsor and kind of nailing that down. And, that the general direction of this is what the commission agrees to. I mean, like I said, the actual timeline may differ. What we're presenting is, if we were going for March, this is what we would need to do. My concern is if we don't have the support of the commission to move forward on this, then we're going to lose a month and there's no way we'll make it, right? So.
this is President Stone. Oh, sorry, were you done, Commissioner Dye?
Yeah.
Okay. This is President Stone. So I was actually just thinking about the open source task force. And one idea might be, in terms of thinking about precedent, maybe you form a task force with, Lauren Jordan. I mean, I keep using her name, but that's just because she self-identified as the person from the League of Women Voters leading the charge. But maybe you form a task force and ask her for other folks that she thinks should participate in that. And it is, you two plus her, plus maybe a couple of other community groups that, come forward, or you can do outreach in that way. And then that's the task force. And then you can have hearings together that's more of a joint effort, and also have folks like the sponsor, them participate with the people who are on the task force who are their constituents. That might be one route to also divide and also potentially find outside resources. That might be one happy medium. Oh, yeah, Commissioner Hayden-Crowell.
President Stone, I think that was an excellent solution because not only is that a way to involve the community groups without all of the rigmarole, but you can tell how late it is. But I have said from the get-go that you need to keep these community groups in your hip pocket. And you know, it's as important as we are here at the Elections Commission to the Board of Supervisors, we're not as important as those community groups. And so, you know, I know getting our, you know, our official mark on things to give them direction, well, nothing's going to matter more than those community groups. Those are the ones that bring the votes. And I know I put things in such stark terms, but that is an excellent solution. I mean, to bring them on board as part of the advisory board, I really think that's how you're gonna do this.
Yeah, well, and that actually was kind of the plan, is that, you know, that we have the endorsement of all these good government groups and community organizations and work on this together. So, so I like that idea. Like I said, I think what I want from this body is just, you know, endorsement to authorize us to move forward in this direction, so that, you know, we're not just acting on our own in our individual capacities, but we actually have the endorsement of the Elections Commission to kind of move forward and try to enact this, you know, plan with these excellent suggestions incorporated. But like I said, I would actually recommend taking some public comment and just see what the reaction is. Because I think we have people on.
Well,
Commissioner Hayden-Crowell.
In the interest of time, I would move that you put together a group of an advisory board, if you will, that would take public comment that is not part of this commission. That you and Commissioner Lavolsi, if you so wish, are part of that, but that it would include probably 2 to 3 members of the community. And if you can get your sponsoring supervisors who might want to be part of this, the roadshow, for lack of a better term, that you move forward to collect feedback, with the goal of then at a certain point bringing that process to the Board of Supervisors with the feedback. And that's where we'll go. And as far as the Elections Commission making an endorsement of all of what that is going to look like, we won't know until you've done that piece with the community and your sponsoring supervisors. So we're not going to vote on what that's going to look like until you have done, you know, you're taking a little roadshow out.
Yeah, and again, this might be a preliminary roadshow.
Sorry, DCA Flores, you were going to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify to the commission that if you decide to go that route, just a reminder that only those 2 commissioners could be present at the meeting at any point. No other commissioners could be involved in this process, because then that would create a committee and that meeting would essentially violate all the rules.
Commissioner Dye, you were going to say something?
No, I mean, I think that's similar to what we had planned, just with a committee instead. So I think that's a fine way to move forward.
So is the motion that Commissioner Dye and Commissioner Lavolsi form a task force with incorporating members of the community and good government groups as a part of their membership to discuss this plan, just to make sure I understand the motion, to discuss this plan and establish what the path is? Is that
To get
correct?
feedback from the community, the goal would be, they have the ability to hold a couple of meetings, if you will, where people can provide feedback, to gather feedback from the community, which we will then hear at a later point in a public hearing. And then we can decide at that point what we want our recommendation to look like.
As a body.
But we as a commission are not going to be putting resources against your efforts. Your actions will be independent
Is
of
it
us.
okay?
So I would love to hear some public comments, since some named individuals are actually on the call.
Yeah.
I just put motion out there, so.
Sorry. Commissioner Livolsi, I think you had your hand up, or
No,
no?
I didn't.
Okay. Is someone going to second the motion, or
Where's it gonna die?
Can I, before you guys, make, second that motion, I'm reviewing your bylaws. I'm not quite sure you can create a task force.
there was one in the past, the open source, sorry, this is President Stone, my computer's literally 2 seconds away from dying.
Official, right?
I got it.
Well,
Vice President Giordano can share more, but there was one in the past.
yeah, actually, I mean, it was actually, just to be honest, it actually was a lot of work to have this advisory. We had bylaws for the advisory committee, and we also had to do the same noticing requirements. But it was just that there was only one commissioner that was sitting on the body, and we had like a whole application process where we invited members of the public to apply. So it's probably going to be more work than just having a committee.
So I move that Commissioners Dye and Livolsi take a lot of what we just talked about over the last hour and a half and maybe process it and tell us at the next meeting. I know you want to move forward, but I think given that we haven't immediately found a perfect solution, sorry, that's a caveat to the motion, just, spending time to think about the feedback and come back based on what you heard and tell us what you think makes sense based on like resources and timeline and other input. So I move that that feedback is reflected upon in the next month, and then a new draft proposal. And also, sorry, one other caveat is to say, I don't think that means that you can't also start working on some of this stuff in the meantime. That doesn't bind you from not starting to work on a lot of the things we talked about. It's just presenting what the plan will be at the next meeting. So that's my motion. Sorry, it was long.
What happened to my motion? Did it just die?
It died.
It's okay. I second your motion.
After turn, the president is done.
So can we hear some public input?
Yeah. Was there anyone else who wanted to comment?
I just wanted to add that our office is, me specifically, because I'm the DCA that comes to these meetings, please reach out to me to discuss the options for meeting outside of here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that we're not answering these questions
Yes.
as in real time, so I would really appreciate that. So I'm here for you.
We will definitely seek your counsel as we move forward and deciding on how we reach out to the public and what meetings happen.
You all. So let's move to public comment.
Okay, there's one hand raised. This is Ms. Gerardin. You are unmuted. You have 3 minutes when you begin speaking.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. That's so weird. As soon as I hit unmute, you all went so quiet for the first time in over an hour. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for having it. Thank you for all the shout outs tonight. I do want to clarify, I am leading the charge with my fellow volunteer and the League of Women Voters of San Francisco's Advocacy Chair, Jenny Say, who is also observing this meeting and may chime in. I wanted to thank a while ago, but Nicholas Heidorn for his thoughtful work on the report and for being here tonight. And thank him for including our recommendation letter that we sent to the Elections Commission back in May of 2022 in his report, which is on, I think, page 75 or so. Now, there are things that we didn't include that letter when it was released, some recommendations for reform, and that might be something we can update. but tonight's conversation, I've just been remembering the work that went into getting the ordinance to convene the redistricting task force. And how, well, let's put it this way. The process with the board took the time it took. That it was not something that we seemed to be able to hurry along. They did act as quickly, I think, as they could, but it is a time-intensive process to get things through the board. And I totally understand your feelings of overwhelm. The redistricting process that we went through was overwhelming for everyone involved. And I think one of the top goals is to make the redistricting reform process less overwhelming, so our next redistricting process is less overwhelming. And I think that starts with this process that you've been talking about here. So it's a really worthwhile conversation and the time that you're taking. I do think that means November is most likely, given all of these factors. Not that we shouldn't set ambitious goals and then have a backup plan. I love a backup plan. One suggestion that the league has is to consider requesting DCA to do a legal analysis memo of what parts of the state assembly bill might apply to San Francisco. That way you can consider that within the recommendations that you make to the board.
With 30
It
seconds.
could be part of the charter amendment, things that could be pulled out. Also, you don't have to recommend one thing. If you have two choices that you're not sure which is the best for San Francisco, you could recommend it to your sponsor and with the pros and cons. So that might be an option for how you go forward. And look at the reports that are already out there. There are really great recommendations that have been thought through, other jurisdictions that have done this. And you have mentioned not copy paste someone else's legislation, but look for inspiration from folks that have already kind of gone through this. So best of luck and look forward to hearing more about this soon. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
May I ask Mr. Arden a question?
Are there any other public commenters?
Yes, there is one more hand raised. It's Ms. Say.
First.
Yeah, okay. Oh, she's from the League of Women Voters as well, right?
Okay, Ms. Say, I'm unmuting you.
Hi, good evening. This is Jen Say with the League of Women Voters of San Francisco. I guess I just wanted to build on top of what Lauren has brought up and about how, yes, this process can be will be overwhelming. And I think maybe another way to think about it, especially based on reading the report and what's mentioned about San Francisco within the report, especially on page 72 to 73, I think is to understand what is the minimum that maybe we can do in trying to make San Francisco more fair maps, more applicable to the Fair Maps Act, and regardless of whether AB 1248 passes or not, kind of similar to previous charter amendments, something like deleting the San Francisco charter's fairly minimal but existing mapping criteria might actually be helpful, given that one of the issues, especially was mentioned in the report, is that under Fair Maps Act, the charter cities may use their own redistricting criteria instead of Fair Maps Act if the city has adopted comprehensive or exclusive redistricting criteria in its city charter. But based on the district city attorney's report, we were exempt, and trying to possibly think of subtraction rather than addition might help us be more Fair Maps, more applicable to Fair Maps Act, and also be able to not write ourselves into a hole again where we don't benefit from state reform in the future, especially given that there's state bills down the line that might impact us and might actually help us. Something to think about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That is all the public commenters.
Commissioner Dye.
Yes, I have a question for you ladies. Would you be interested in being part of a task force?
Public commenters.
Can you unmute?
Are we allowed to address public commenters directly? Oh, that was my fault. She did ask me and I said, let's finish the public commenters.
Yeah.
That was my fault.
Can we let them respond?
Okay.
Who do you like to respond first?
Lauren, I guess.
Okay, Ms. Gerardin, I'm unmuting you, so to respond to questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, this would be something the league would be interested in. We have a shared volunteer model, so.
Just a moment, Ms.
Yeah.
Gerardin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess.
Sorry,
maybe
just to clarify, I'm sorry, members of the public. Just to clarify, we were just making sure we understood the rules of asking a member of the public a question. So if you're hearing some rumblings, that's what's happening. We don't intend to be rude. So Vice President Jordanek, I'll hand it back to you, whatever you were going to say.
Did you already ask the question?
Yeah, so I was waiting for your response and you had started to say the League of Women Voters.
Okay, yes, the answer is, she said the League of Women. We need a yes or no answer was what we're hearing from the city attorney's office.
Yes, with the caveat of our own capacity and availability.
Yes, fair enough.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for everyone's patience with that process.
And thank you, Ms. Witsay, for the suggestion. That is a simple way that might be a good suggestion to our sponsor, is that we simply eliminate the rules that we have and then fall under state law.
Are there any other questions?
Okay, is there any other discussion, or was there any other public commenters?
No.
Okay.
Well,
Is there?
Everybody else.
Oh, we have to take a vote. We have to take a vote.
We have to vote.
Okay, so what are we voting on?
What was your motion?
My motion. Yeah, but then we ultimately, the question about the task force, oh, no, sorry. I told you, I'm not good late at night. Okay, so we're voting on the motion that Commissioners Lavolsi and Dye will take the feedback that came from this discussion and reflect on that and incorporate that into an updated plan, and also in tandem, perhaps start to make progress toward some of the goals that are outlined in the plan. So let's run through the roll call. Vice President Jordanek.
Yes.
Commissioner Bernholz.
Yes.
Commissioner Dye.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavolsi.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
And I, Commissioner Stone, vote yes. So the motion passes unanimously. Let's just quickly move to agenda item number 9, their agenda for future meetings. So one item that has come up that I wanted to raise, and I'll hand it over to Commissioner Lavolsi, is the timing for the next meeting. So I'll hand it to Commissioner Lavolsi.
Sure. I have a prior obligation that I cannot change. I will not be in the state of California on April 19th.
Did you just get an excused absence?
Yes, so there was.
That's what I would like to know. What are my options?
Oh yeah. So you can miss a meeting. The other question is, being open to moving the meeting a week based on folks' availability. I at first, when Commissioner Lavolsi mentioned this to me, I said I didn't think I would be in town, but now I believe I will be. But I think it would require everyone to share if they would be available to push the meeting a week. And we would also have to look into, obviously, the room scheduling. Otherwise, also, one absence is obviously an option as well.
Okay.
Vice President Jordanek had his hand up, sorry.
Well, I'm pretty flexible. I can meet at all other times.
Thank you. Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
I'm not that flexible. I'm put all the meetings in my calendar and I have a new job and it's just difficult. But like I'm going to be gone 2 weeks in May and I moved my vacation after I got appointed to this and paid more on my airfare so I wouldn't miss the meeting. I do think that when stuff comes up and I may have to have an excused absence down the line. And so there are times when I do think we should talk about moving the meeting, like now in December, we should be moving that meeting. Yeah, but it's nothing, I just think stuff comes up for all of us and it's okay to miss a meeting.
Sure.
That's all. You get an excused absence, but we'll miss you.
Commissioner Dye or Commissioner Bernholz or Commissioner Parker, do you have any input that you would like to add?
I'm open to looking at other dates, but if it causes someone else to miss the meeting, then I say we revert to our standard date.
Commissioner Parker?
I am flexible also trying to make some plans, so definitely would want to decide now because that would affect all of that. I think, so I am flexible. And I think in general for the public, it's good to keep things on the same predictable time. That's my experience with public meetings is that it's pretty helpful to keep them standard if at all possible.
Thank you. Yes, point of information or clarification or whatever. It is in our bylaws that we hold these meetings at this time. We do, basically, I had said that there are 3 options. The way I see it is, we miss, if we have an obligation, we miss a meeting, no big deal. We can discuss it as a body or I think the other one was remote, but that isn't an option. So I do think it is, I agree. Consistency is important, but if it were easy for everyone, maybe adjusting. But Commissioner Bernholz, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I think I accidentally muted her.
Oh.
Sorry.
Commissioner Bernholz, you may have been muted if you were responding, otherwise no problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm flexible. I have no issue with the dates.
Okay, so it seems like I will have to make a decision and I'm not going to do that in this moment, but I will provide notice and I will probably ask from from just logistics of planning the meeting, I'll probably follow up with the body. So in terms of agenda items for future meetings, I'd like to just kind of close this item. I think there is a process of, I've been reaching out if people have things they want to add. I think obviously we'll review some components of what we talked about today as continued items, but if there's anything explicitly someone wants to mention right now, I think I'd like to just move to adjournment.
Just really quickly.
Yeah.
Annual report.
That will be discussed when it's ready. Yes. Okay.
Comment.
Let's move to public comment. I got excited. Sorry.
I think everybody will, and then they didn't.
Okay, there are no hands raised.
Okay. And with that, I'm closing agenda 9 and first using that gavel. Yay. 10:42 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.